Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zen and Fanfics. Today we are featuring part 2 of What If Deku Had Dragon and Bunny Guardian? The story is written by NezutheRatGod on Wattpad. Before we start, please like and subscribe for more content. Now let's dive into the story. 2 days later, Izuku slowly opened his eyes to the black void he was in before he suddenly unlocked all but the second user's quirks. He looked around until he saw the floating platform where they all were and were sitting except the second user who was leaning against the wall looking at him. "Welcome, Ninth," said Yoichi as he looked up at him. "Normally you'd be waking up right now. But first we need to talk about some things we didn't have time for." He nodded his head and walked over to the other users and looked at them. "First let's start by introducing ourselves to help Izuku. Then we can tell him what we want to talk about," said Yoichi. "I'll go first. I'm the first user, Yoichi Shigaraki." In the back, the second user said nothing. The third user said nothing for a moment before he spoke. "My quirk is called Fa Gene. It works off of kinetic energy," he said, which made Yoichi sigh in sadness. His brother did so much damage to these two. "Haikid Shinomori, and my quirk is called Danger Sense, which is self-explanatory," said the fourth user, who was a lean man with short, white hair that parts away from the base of his forehead and thin, green eyes that slant slightly downward. Due to his accelerated aging, he gained 2 scar-like cracks stretching from the left side of his forehead down to his chin. "Daigoro Banjo mine is Black Whip, and you already know how to use it," said the fifth user, a large muscular man of a wide build. He had a square jaw, small dull blue eyes, and lacked eyebrows. He was also bald and had a very short beard. His outfit consisted of dark leather clothes, golden stylish goggles, and a bandolier. The leather jacket had yellow shoulder pads, had it open, and didn't wear a shirt. It showed his muscular torso. My quirk is called Smoke Screen. I can cover an area in massive amounts of smoke," said the sixth user, who was a fairly short man with short, dark hair parted twice away from his narrow eyes. His hero costume consists of a large red jacket with numerous straps and buttons, and a high collar that obscures his mouth and nose. Accompanying this are dark, fairly baggy pants and large white hiking boots. His forearms are also wrapped in sports tape. "Nana Shimura. My quirk is called Float, which allows you to levitate in place, unless you add momentum to move," was an appealing woman with a tough demeanor. She was a tall woman with a curvaceous figure, and at the same time, she was well built even for a woman, as befitting a one for all user. She was fair-skinned and had a small mole below her bottom lip, centered to the right, and sharp, intelligent eyes with long eyelashes. Her hair was dark and straight, kept shoulder length, with the exception of a clump of short bangs hanging above her forehead, and was usually styled in a half-up, half-down bun. Her hero costume consisted of a dark, sleeveless bodysuit with a high collar, yellow elbow-length gloves, and white knee-high boots. Around her waist was a belt with an angular golden buckle, a small cape attached around the back which hung down to her knees, and over her shoulders was a longer cape, buttoned to the shoulders of her bodysuit. "Tashinori Yagi, but you already know that and everything about me, young Aizawa," said All Might with his trademark smile. "So what is it you all wanted to talk about?" said Izuku, looking at them all. "Your fight with the Nomu. It was very close, and if we didn't help you, then you and most likely the rest of your class would be dead, along with whoever showed up after you passed out," said In, looking at him. Izuku looked down at that. "I know. I should have changed my strategy instead of using overwhelming strength like All Might. But I was so scared and nervous that I used a style to beat the enemy into SPM Sen," said Nana, cutting him off. "Yes. If you had the physical build and strength of him, then I'd say that would be good strategy, but you don't have that," said Banjo. "I mean, Gran Torino and Night Eye trained you to use speed and quick, but strong attacks." "I know, and I promise I'll work even harder to make sure I never make that mistake again. I'll use my strengths against the enemy and not use a different fighting style," said Izuku. "Good," said Yoichi. "Now we can get to the true reason why we called you here." "And what is that?" "For one of them, it's after lots of talking and noticing that your connection with One for All is stronger than anyone else's. We all came to the same conclusion, especially with your hair solidifying it and the family pictures of your whole family," said Yoichi. "You're a descendant of mine." Izuku was beyond shocked to realize that he was related to the first user, even if it was from multiple generations ago. His own BLD seemed to know it, which made the connection so much stronger. "So, what does this mean?" said Izuku. "We talked a lot about this ever since we learned it, but we think you might end up changing one for all, along with completing it fully," said Hikage. "Yoichi believed that since your connection is so much stronger that it might cause quirk awakenings for either one of the quirks, or possibly all of them." "Wait, are you serious?" said Izuku. "It's just a possibility. Your bond is stronger than anyone else's ever was. It's the same as if you were born with this quirk, but somehow the connection is twice as strong," said Nana. "Wow," said Izuku, shocked. "Not to be too rude, but we should get to the main reason," said the second user. "Right," said Yoichi, who looked at Izuku. "My brother is still alive." All for 1 inch. Izuku froze at hearing this, and it felt as if his BLD ran ice cold. "Are you sure?" said Izuku. "Yes. Only my brother could make a monster like that, though I suspect he had help given the injury All Might gave him," said Yoichi. "I blew the top of his head clean off his body, and yet he still survived," said All Might. I'm sorry, young Aizawa. It's okay, All Might. You thought you killed him. Even if you didn't, I'm sure he's at least crippled or badly injured," said Izuku. "Even so, he's still extremely dangerous and most likely got quirks to either counter his disabilities or just negate them," said the second user. "That's the type of monster he is." Izuku looked down and clenched his fists before looking up at them all. "So what do I do?" "Train," said Banjo. "Train to use our quirks until it's second nature and get as much control over one for all as possible." "He's right. Also, Tsukachi, Naitai, and Nezu about this. I'm sure they will start to get things ready while Nezu and Naitai work on a way for you to get as much combat experience as possible," said All Might. Izuku nodded his head at hearing that. "Good. Also, you may have some of our memories to use our quirks, but you'll have to train until you drop, and we'll do our best to help you when we can," said Nana. "I'm ready for anything. I won't let another user have to bear the weight of this burden," said Izuku. "Speaking of next user, you're the last one, because One for All has grown to strong, and it refuses to leave you. It sees you as its rightful owner and will never be able to be passed on again," said Yoichi. "What?" As this conversation was happening, in a bar somewhere in Kamino Ward, Shigaraki was both seething in anger, but was just as happy. "So, MSTR, it's just like you said. It's been passed on, and I got to see this new user, as you call them," said Shigaraki. "Oh, do tell Tamura," said All for One. "He's strong, very strong, along with fast. Not only that, but he has lots of experience with the quirk. He even had different quirks," said Shigaraki. All for One was silent for a long moment before chuckling was heard from the TV. "So my brother's quirk has evolved to the point that users can use the past user's quirks. How fascinating," he said, grinning at the end. "What will we do about him, MSTR? He's far too dangerous, given he killed the Nomu," said Shigaraki. "For now, nothing. We shall stay away and observe, learn and study him so we know how strong he is and what he can do," said All for One. "As you wish, MSTR," said Shigaraki. The TV screen turned off, and All for One leaned back his chair and grinned darkly. Things are changing faster than he planned or predicted. He'll now have to plan accordingly, or else his plans will be moot. "I think I need to sow more seeds of chaos. But first to leave another hint for the Hero Association, so that this new user will have even more pressure and tensions will rise," he said while launching at the end. "Paying off government officials and politicians is so easy. Now I'll have them put more attention on him, so I can plan accordingly," he said with a smile. "I can't wait to meet you, Izuku Aizawa, and finally get my quirk back from you." Meanwhile, in a hospital, both Rumi and Ryuko were sitting in Izuku's room, holding one of his hands each. They refused to leave his side ever since he was allowed visitors. The only times they left was for food, the bathroom, and to see Izuku's dad to make sure he was okay. "I'm angry at myself. I shouldn't have let him fight that monster alone," said Rumi, looking down at the bed and subconsciously gripping his hand tighter as tears threatened to leak out from her eyes. "Rumi, he did it to protect you," said Ryuko. She was about to continue, but Rumi cut her off. "I know, but I'm his girlfriend, just like you. Our job is to protect him just as much. Plus, we are heroes," said Rumi. "Yet I left to protect everyone, and he stayed behind, and He almost died because of that. It's not your fault, Rumi, said Emmy, entering the room. According to Shota, he was taught since he could remember that as a hero, his job is to protect everyone, and that goes double for the ones he loves, she said, looking at his sleeping form. He loved you too so much that he pushed you away so he wouldn't see you hurt. I understand that, but, said Rumi, we want to protect him just as much. He's our boyfriend, and as his girlfriends, it's our job to also help protect him and keep him happy, said Ryuko. Emmy smiled at hearing this. She could tell that these two loved him from the bottom of their hearts, and the only thing they would love more than him is their kids when they get some. Somewhere in Japan, Eri sneezed again, which had the lucky effect of making Overhaul postpone her sessions for another week. He didn't want to get sick or get germs. In NNGH, Izuku slowly opened his eyes, and once his vision cleared, he saw two pairs of eyes. One pair was piercing red, but held so much love, happiness, and worry. The others were appealing gold with slitted pupils that held the same amount of love and happiness along with worry. Izuku, they both shouted as they wrapped their arms around him. He wheezed slightly from the strength of both girls. Before he could say anything, he saw something he never wanted to see them do. They started to cry as they held him. Arumi, Ryuko can't breathe. Izuku wheezed out while his face was starting to turn blue. Both of them looked and saw his blue face and stopped hugging him as tightly, but still did hug him. You scared me, said Rumi. Me as well, said Ryuko as she looked at him. Why you were so hurt. I'm sorry about worrying you too. I tried my best to not get hurt and defeat the Nomu. And well, here I am. I'm still alive, said Izuku. You still scarred us, said Rumi, glaring at him. He looked down with a sad smile. Like I said, I'm sorry about that. You owe us big time, Ryuko said. I know. I'd be scarred if you said I didn't, he said with a soft smile before he looked up and saw Emmy. Hey, Mom. How's Dad? He's still under surgery. He only just left the ICU, she said with a sad look in his eyes. We had some close calls during surgery, and it's only thanks to him being so stubborn that he pulled through. I'm glad he pulled through, he said with his mind still going over the conversation he had with the previous users and his fight with the Nomu. He then looked down and saw his new scars, even with the new bandages. The door was opened, and Recovery Girl walked into the room. Ah, good. I see you're awake, Izuku. Hello, Recovery Girl. So, when can I leave? He said, looking at her. Well, even though you were badly injured, thankfully you still had lots of stamina, so I was able to heal all the major ones, said Recovery Girl. So after I use my quirk one more time, then yes, you can leave. Good. I hate hospitals, he said. You, Shota, and your hatred for hospitals, muttered Emmy with a small chuckle. Before she could begin, a knock at the door was heard, and a Hero Association agent walked into the room. He had Esed-back black hair with charcoal black eyes that didn't hold a single emotion, even though he was smiling. Are you Izuku Aizawa? Said the agent, looking at them. Yes, he said, feeling uneasy about this. Good. Me and my president is quite happy that you are doing well, he said with a smile, but it was hollow and wasn't real. Izuku didn't say anything, and both Rumi and Ryuko didn't like him, nor the fact he was interested in Izuku. What is the Hero Association doing here? Said Izuku with his guard up. My president has grown interested in you. You have lots of potential, and the association would like to recruit you to our side and organization, he said with his same fake smile. Rumi and Ryuko glared at him, and both of them held his hands tighter. Izuku looked at him for a long moment before he spoke. I'm sorry, but I'd have to decline. I want to be my own hero and not be linked to other heroes or organizations. The man looked at him for a long moment with his face betraying no emotion before he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. Here's my number in case you ever decide to change your mind and wish to properly protect society. He then walked away before he pulled out his boss to inform her that Izuku declined the invite. It meant they will have to try harder if what her and the board believe is true, that this boy is the successor of All Might. Home sweet home, said Izuku, walking into the house with Rumi and Ryuko. Emmy decided to stay at the hospital for when Shota woke up, but told the teens to go home and rest along with enjoy the time off from school. He didn't even get 2 steps in before both Rumi and Ryuko hugged him from behind. Izuku, "You were so injured," said Rumi, holding onto him tightly. We were so scared. "We thought you were going to die, and it made us realize something," said Ryuko. Izuku turned and looked at them. "Life is too short." "Izuku," said Rumi with a large blush before she took his hand and placed it on her chest, making her cheeks redder. "Please mate with us." Before he could say anything, Ryuko took his hand as well and gently put two of his fingers in her mouth where his tongue began to trail around it, and she gently bit his fingers, trying to mark him. Izuku felt his BLD flowing to two different parts of his body, his cheeks and in between his legs. "Izuku," gasped Ryuko, taking his wet fingers from her mouth with a long trail of saliva. "Please." He felt his brain shorting out. Not only that, but his nose picked up on a smell both of them were producing subconsciously, which was making him more aroused. Before they knew it, they were in his room, and Izuku was shoved onto the bed, and Rumi immediately jumped him, sitting on him and grinding against him while kissing him hotly. Ryuko felt a twinge of jealousy and moved, shoving Rumi's head over a little bit to kiss him as well. They continued to kiss when Rumi grinded extra hard against him, and loudly, "Oh my God, you're so hard." She looked down and saw that his member was stretching his boxers and shorts. Ryuko looked, and her eyes gleamed. She wanted it, and she was going to get it. "Rumi, move," said Ryuko, moving, so her head was going to be in front of his dash. "He make me," she said. She then squeaked when Izuku grabbed her by her large hips and lifted her to his chest before sitting her down. "Take them off. I'm hungry, and I want to eat my chocolate bunny." When she heard that, her heart started to hammer away. "Too long," she said before using her hands, and just ripped her leggings open and moved her panties over, showing Izuku her dash. He grabbed her thighs and pulled her forward so she was sitting on his face, and he stuck his tongue in her and began to eat her out. Rumi let out at that and began to breathe. Back with Ryuko, she all but ripped his pants off and ripped his boxers in half to finally get what she wanted. Seeing it made her gasp. It was at least 7 to 8 inches in size and nice and thick. She subconsciously ate her lips as she felt a wetness form between her legs. Moving in, she gently began to getting a sudden buck of the hips from him, showing he liked it, making her smile. She then started to JRK it off while trailing her tongue up and down it. Ryuko wanted so badly to take his length down her throat, but was scared about her sharp teeth cutting his member. Just the thought about taking it down her throat made her hand drift between her legs, and she began to play with herself. With Rumi, she was a panting and mess. Izuku was ing her insides in all the right spots, and he was even using his thumb to rub her CLT. He was pleasuring her so much that her toes curled and grabbed her his free hand that was squeezing her muscled thighs and placed it on her now exposed large chest. "Izu, I'm gonna," said Rumi with her head getting lighter and her becoming louder. Izuku pushed his tongue in deeper and rubbed her CLT harder before he pinched her dash, pulling on it rougher, which made her squeak in pleasure. Then he felt her finally, and her walls pinched his tongue. "OMOH, my God." She leaned backwards, but Izuku's hand on her tips moved to her hip, holding her in place. He was pleasuring her through her orgasm, and it was making her brain go blank from sheer pleasure. While that was happening, Ryuko was pleasuring herself harder by fingering herself while she continued to JRK Izuku off and trail her tongue up and down his. She brought it up and began to circle to the tip, and he bucked his hips, making his member enter her mouth, shocking her. He was telling her to blow him, and she obliged by wrapping her lips around it, but making sure to keep her jaw open enough her razor-sharp teeth don't cut him. She took it all the way down to the base, and even tried to push more in. She was silently thanking her dragon quirk, not giving a GG reflex, since she can eat large things and not choke herself. Izuku hissed as he felt the back of Ryuko's throat. She then began to vibrate her cords like she does when she growls, and his grip on Rumi was even tighter. Rumi squeaked louder, feeling him squeeze or pinch her harder. Ryuko continued to him off while Izuku's hips bucked, showing he was loving it, which just turned her on more. After another minute or two, they were all sweaty messes, and Ryuko finally stopped. And GM off, since Izuku almost came. She wanted to drink it, but she wanted it somewhere else much more, and her instincts were screaming at her to mate, and she was going to do it. Taking off her clothes as fast as she could, she pushed his member up against his stomach and sat on it, grinding on it. She then leaned forward, so she was looking over Rumi's shoulder. "Izuku," she said huskily, "can I put it in?" Rumi looked at her with a glare since she wanted it. But before she could say anything, Ryuko pulled her into a tongue-tying kiss, making her eyes go wide. "Don't worry. You'll get your turn afterwards, I promise. But first move so I can kiss him, then you can let him continue," she said. Grumbling a bit, she sat up and sat next to Izuku. His mouth and chin were wet from eating Rumi out. Before he could even begin to regain his thoughts, Ryuko leaned forward and kissed him with nothing but love and dash. "I love you, Izuku," she said, as she moved her up to his insane stamina. Then he noticed the other thing. Rumi was looking at him with a very hungry look in her eyes. "My turn." "Foo dash." He was cut off when she tackled him down. "You're still ready to go, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Now me," she said with a grin. "Okay, I'll SD dash. No, Izuku, I want you to me," she said. He looked at her for a moment before he smiled coyly. "Then get up so I can." "He make me," she said. The next thing she knew, Black Whip restrained her and pinned her to the wall, where he then stood before her and lined himself up while having one arm under her. "But looks like I did," he said. Rumi, seeing this and feeling so vulnerable but safe, started to breathe heavily, especially since she was just lifted high enough that not even her elongated feet could touch the ground. This meant she was completely at his mercy, and it turned her on to know that. Before she could say anything, he put it in her and silenced her with a kiss, while still using Black Whip to restrain her arms and legs against the wall. Izuku started to dominate her mouth, since he knew that she absolutely loved it when he did. He then used his other arm and grabbed the underside of her thighs, using his arms to hold her up as he proceeded to her. Grunts and squeaks were heard from both of them as he continued to move in and out of her for a while, making her. Multiple times, after a couple minutes, he leaned back while using Black Whip to lift her legs up so they were draped over his shoulders. Then he started to move into her harder. Rumi was in cloud 9 feeling this. He just hammering away at her spot, and he was in complete control over her, the only thing that could make it be dash. She was pulled out of her thoughts as she came again when he bit her ear. "Ishuku, I love you," she said, barely staying conscious. "I love you, grunt too, Rumi," he said, trying to last longer. Her seeing this made her wrap her feet and hands around the back of his neck, pulling him into a kiss. "Breed me," she huskily said between kisses. Izuku began to grunt louder, trying but failing to hold it back, but then he couldn't hold it anymore and pumped her full while thrusting erratically. Rumi came hard, her toes curled, and her eyes rolled into the back of her head. After a couple seconds, she passed out in his arms while still breathing heavily. The sunlight shined through the curtains of the bedroom, and Izuku slowly opened his eyes. He looked down and saw that Rumi and Ryuko were curled up to him, sleeping soundly. Memories of last night raced through his mind, and a blush formed on his cheeks. He then looked at both girls and was about to leave when an open box caught his eye. It was PRGNNCY pills. Seeing that, he sighed in relief and left to go make them breakfast. A couple minutes later, both girls started to wake up. Seeing each other, they smiled. "Morning," said Ryuko. "Morn," mumbled Rumi, who tried to reach out for Izuku, but saw that he was gone. Izuku. Now Ryuko was confused and looked around, not seeing him either. For some reason, both of them were scared for a moment, reaching around the bed, trying to find him, worried the night they spent was only a dream. Their brain forgetting the clear proof of it happening, still sloshing inside both of them. The bedroom door was opened, and a shirtless Izuku walked into the room with a large tray of breakfast food for both girls. "Good morning, you two," he said with a smile as he put the tray down and gave Ryuko her breakfast, which was a lot of eggs, sausage, bacon, and a small bowl of fruit along with some toast. For Rumi, hers was eggs and bacon with a bunch of carrots and roasted tomatoes and toast. He then handed both of them tea, just the way they loved it, with some milk and a bit of sugar. Neither Rumi nor Ryuko knew why, but he looked even better than he already looked. Izuku leaned forward and kissed both girls. "I made you both your favorite breakfast, so I hope you like it," said Izuku, smiling. "I love you," they both said. I love both of you just as much, he said, kissing them again and sitting down to spend the morning with them. He never wanted to see them cry or be worried again. Izuku let out on last grunt before he began to breathe heavily. Him and Rumi and Ryuko just finished another round, and he just filled up Ryuko, while next to them was a passed-out Rumi who was just as filled. He rolled off of her and was panting. Ryuko immediately rolled over and placed her head on him while her legs kept shaking. That was amazing, she cooed, trailing her hands over his chest, as she also gently bit his shoulder, marking him again, and at the exact same time telling Izuku she is willing to go another round. Sorry, Ryuko, but I'm spent. You two wore me down, said Izuku, still trying to regain his breath. Letting out a growl-like laugh, she smiled and kissed his chin before gently. I enjoy it. That's okay. I can wait for later when we can show you again just how much we love you. You're more than our boyfriend, Izuku. You're both me and Rumi's mate. I know it sounds a little weird, but given we marked you, that means we'll always love and be with you. Just then they heard shifting, and Rumi snuggled over and laid her head on his chest while her ears flopped backwards, showing she was happy. I love both of you just as much, he said, feeling warmed at what she said. It made him very happy, and then kissed Rumi, making her smile in her sleep. Ryuko looked at her and honestly wanted to kiss her again, but knew that Rumi wasn't Bayel like her. Not that it mattered in the end. She had Izuku to kiss, and sometimes when they went at it, she could kiss Rumi and she wouldn't care since she's two in the moment. She was pulled out of her thoughts when Izuku cupped her chin and kissed her again, putting as much love and passion into it. He put enough that it actually made her toes curl in both happiness and pleasure. You're adorable, my little dragon, he teased. That warmed her heart to hear. She loved it more than anything when he'd call her as, what did I do to deserve you, she cooed. Make me happy and love me for me. He said, let me cook for you and get to cuddle you whenever I want. Let me love you and you help me achieve my dreams. A warm blush formed on her cheeks. She didn't think it was possible, but she might have just fallen for him again. What about me? Said Rumi, leaning up with messy bed hair, and one ear was flopped in front of her face while the other was standing up. Her blanket fell off her shoulder and exposed her cleavage, getting a slight nosebleed from Izuku, while Ryuko giggled, seeing Izuku get mesmerized by Rumi's chest. Well, you're always fun to fight and train with, plus I get to tease you, also whenever I'm down and no one else can get to me. You barge in and drag me out of my funk. I also get to cook for you and watch your adorable expression when I make you food. And finally, he leaned forward and kissed her good enough it almost knocked the wind out of her. I love my little chocolate bunny. Rumi blushed, and she looked at him before she looked at Ryuko, and they both agreed. The next thing Izuku knew, he was pinned down to the bed, and both girls were looming over him. I think it's time we reward you again, said Ryuko. This is going to be a norm, isn't it? He said, slightly nervous. Yes, especially when mating season comes in. But for me, Rumi leaned down and gently bit his ear. I want you to me like we're both rabbits, and no means yes. The very next day, Emmy came home and called the teens, and she couldn't hide the SHD eating grin on her face for what she saw. Sitting on the couch in front of her was the three teens, but they were covered in bites, scratches, and hickeys, with most being on Izuku while the hickeys are all over the girls' necks and going down. Both Rumi and Ryuko were leaning on Izuku, cooing for how happy they were. He literally, any anger out of them, and now they were very happy and giggly. Well, it seems you three enjoyed your time alone, but besides that I have good news and news itself, said Emmy, looking at them before sweat dropping. Rumi was snuggled up to Izuku and kept rubbing her chin on his shoulder while peppering his cheek and neck with kisses. She was the most affected by last night, since he didn't stop until she passed out from sheer pleasure overload, and now she is very lovey-dovey. You're so cute, Izu. And dreamy, she said with hearts in her eyes. Izuku coughed into his hand and had to quickly cover Rumi's, since she was going to make a dirty joke. But instead she started to his fingers and ed on them as if they were something else. See, continue, Mom. Before she loses what little control she has, said Izuku, hoping she'd get off her. Hi soon. Don't make me a grandma too soon. Emmy just giggled. Meanwhile, in a dark underground base, Overhaul's goons were exhausted. They spent the last week cleaning the massive base 8 times over and cleaned every single square inch of it all because the test subject named Eri kept sneezing, which made Overhaul start to panic, giving his germophobia. They were hoping that the base was finally clean and could stop. Achoo! A single sneeze was heard across the hall, and all of Overhaul's underlings just hoped that he didn't hear it. I heard Eri sneeze. Clean the base again. I don't so much as want to see a single speck of dust anywhere. We need to find the germs that keep making her sneeze, yelled Overhaul over the intercom. The underlings all started to cry at hearing this. Underscore. Your dad is doing good and in a month's time should make a full recovery. Now for the news. UA is now a boarding school and both me and your dad agreed to it. I don't know if Rumi and Ryuko's families did or not, said Emi. My mom did, said Ryuko in a better state of mind than Rumi, since she isn't on such a high. You'll have to spank me to get me to tell you, said Rumi, peppering his jaw with kisses. Emi couldn't help but laugh. She honestly thought it was cute, and she did hope that Rumi would eventually be able to control her. UAL needs, or else Izuku won't be able to do anything. So what day will we be moving in? He said. In 2 days. Then you'll have till Wednesday to get used to the dorms before school starts again, she said. Okay, that's good. I'll make sure we are all packed by then, said Izuku. You can pack me with Wymum. Rumi's mouth was covered by his hand to keep her from making an innuendo. Rumi, pack your stuff or no. Till after the sports festival, said Izuku. She was immediately snapped out of her. And in the blink of the eye, she was in his room grabbing all her stuff and shoving them in bags. Ugh. I'll go make sure she isn't destroying anything, said Izuku, leaving the room and heading to his. Both Emi and Ryuko were left alone, and neither really knew what to say, given how both herself and Rumi acted in front of Izuku's stepmother. The rooms are soundproof, said Emi suddenly. Ryuko immediately covered her face, wishing she would just die. Rumi, no, put my bed down. We in it, so it's coming with. We still have 2 days. I don't care. 2 days passed, and everyone was now moved into the new dorms. Each student got their own individual rooms, but Izuku, Rumi, and Ryuko, who all shared a slightly larger room. It was talked about during the planned construction of the building, and Aizawa more or less explained that they lived together since they met and were next to inseparable, plus they are very responsible for their age. And that should be the last of it, said Izuku, putting down a box in a room. Thanks, Izuku. Why don't you go and relax while me and Rumi put everything away, said Ryuko, pulling out the sheets from one box. What? I can help, he said, but was stopped by Rumi. You packed most of the stuff and brought it to our rooms while we got up with the girls. Let us do this in return, she said, standing her ground regardless of her being short enough that he could rest his chin on her head. Fine. Just let me know if both you need my help, he said before heading downstairs to go talk with his friends. Arriving downstairs, he saw that almost everyone was in the common room talking about the USJ or what they did while at home or other stuff. Hey bro, how's it going? Said Kirishima with a smile as he walked towards him with Tokoimi, following along with Mina and Ochako. Hey guys, how's it going? Said Izuku with a smile. We should be asking you that, fellow Dark Dweller. You were more hurt than any of us, and yet you stand here, said Tokoimi. Haha, don't worry, I'm fine. If I wasn't, then Rumi and Ryuko would probably tie me to a bed and baby me until I was healed, said Izuku, waving his hand in a dismissive fashion. They could all somehow see those 2 girls doing it. Izuku, are you sure you're okay? You looked really hurt, said Ochako, worried about her classmate. Yeah, I'm okay. How about all of you guys? I know that some of you got into villain fights, said Izuku. The rest of us are good, said Mina before she noticed something that made her cheeks flush lilac, and a giant grin formed on her face. Mama Izuku, I didn't know you were so naughty. Look at all those hickeys and bite marks on your neck. The others looked, and indeed what Mina said was true. Izuku's neck had multiple bite marks and was covered in hickeys. He had absolutely no idea what to say in this situation, since he was worried that if he said anything, then Ida might find out and start screaming about rules. Tell them you fell down some stairs, said all the previous users at once. I fell down some stairs, said Izuku before the reality of what he said, and how stupid it sounded hit him, stairs. Really, guys? I wanted to say got in a fight with a tiger and lost, said In. I would have gone for a vending machine, said All Might. More like a dragon and bunny, and he tamed them, said Nana. You just say that since you watched, said Banjo. I have zero regrets or shame, said Nana. Nana, screamed Izuku in absolute horror. What? It was hot to watch, and I'm honestly jealous of those two girls, said Nana. I wish I was in that position. Don't worry, Izuku. We'll try and stop her from watching. Unlike her, the rest of us respect her private or life, said Yoichi, trying to drag Nana away. Don't drag me away. I want to watch him. His girlfriends again. I didn't even know US girls are that flexible, screamed Nana. The past users drag her away and left Izuku wanting to die in sheer shame. Stairs? Really, Izuku, said Kyoko, walking towards them after seeing Izuku and wanted to thank him for saving herself, but also Momo. Are really bumpy stairs, said Izuku, but it sounded more like a question. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for saving me and Momo's along with Denki's lives. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure those two will thank you once they see you or are free, said Kyoka. It's no problem, Jiro. I was just doing what any hero would, he said. She let out a small chuckle before bumping her fist against his chest. I would have hugged you, but I feel like your girlfriends would kill me. His mind then went back to the past 3, almost 4 days of next to nothing, but giving both girls were in heat, and both had a very strong carnal longing to mate with him that overtook almost everything else. Though thankfully, yesterday it finally calmed down enough that they weren't jumping him at every chance. Just every other. Considering my break. They probably would, he said in all honesty, since on the train ride here, girls were looking at him, and both Rumi S&D Ryuko were glaring or downright growling at them. Kyoka just chuckled before walking off, leaving them. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Yelled Ida to get the attention of everyone in the room. Sadly, that was also when Rumi and Ryuko walked in, meaning they also had to listen to him. Good now, given we all live here in the dorms, I've made a schedule for everyone to follow along with rules, he said, showing it. Rule 1. No. Physical contact with significant other. Rule 2. Bedtime is at 7. Rule 3. Wasting time on anything but studying or training is highly frowned upon. Izuku didn't get any further down the rules before he stepped up as class president. Okay, Idano, we're going to follow those rules. That's just stupid and won't let us have our own freedom. But these rules will make us better heroes, especially the first one, which especially goes for you and Usajiyama and Tatsuma. You three should break up, giving it a distraction, and you should cease all physical contact, said Ida. If looks could kill, then Ida would be dead right now. Rumi and Ryuko looked beyond pissed. No way in hell would they do any of that. Izuku keeps them warm and safe along with loved, and they won't get rid of it because of someone with a log up his butt. You know, you can go. Yourself, said Rumi, glaring at him as her ears flopped backwards. We aren't going to break up with Izuku just because you have a bunch of rules. Our own lives are our own. So stay out of our lives, said Ryuko. Just mind your own business. If people want to be in relationships, then they should be allowed to, said Izuku. The others in the common room nodded in agreement with Izuku and his girlfriends. But relationships just hinder hero work. Not only that, but we shouldn't have physical relationships here in school. It's a slander on UA's name, said Ida while doing hand-chopping motions. Izuku just flat out ignored him and went to the kitchen to see what it had for food. Rumi and Ryuko went to the couch and sat down to relax near the girls. That was also when Mina noticed something on both of them. It looks like you two were having fun. Your necks have hickeys all over them, and I even see a bite mark, she said with a giggle. Ryuko smiled at that, though she was blushing. Yeah. No point in really hiding it, but we officially became mates over the break. The blush grew more as she smiled happily at saying that. And was it fun, said Rumi with a dreamy smile, and look as memories of it all came flooding back, and her body started to get ready to go again. I don't mean to intrude, but what do you mean, mate? Said Ochako, a little embarrassed. Well, in the simplest terms, it means that me and Rumi marked him as ours and he'll forever be ours. He can never be with someone else, and will never he with another person either. That's why he has that bite mark on his neck. That was me marking him as mine, said Ryuko. And for me, I rub my chin on him, marking him with my smell so others know he's mine and well. During the last couple days, we had him mark us as well, she said, gesturing to the bite marks on both of them. Wow, animal quirks sure are interesting. Sue, is it the same for you? Said Kyoka. I do have mating seasons, but for mate I'm not sure since my quirk didn't inherit many frog physical features, besides my leg muscles being stronger and me having a long tongue, Karo said Sue. Plus, if I do have a mating thing like them, then I haven't met my mate. The other girls nodded at that and continued to talk for a while before Toru came up with the idea to have everyone show off their rooms. Rooms are all canon. The last room was Izuku's, Rumi's, Ryuko's room, which confused the rest. Aizawa, why is your room shared with these two? They are supposed to have their own room, yelled Ida. We've lived together for almost as long as we've known each other. We are so used to sleeping next to each other that sleeping alone is weird. Plus, my dad talked to the staff, and they agreed to allow this since we've done this for years, said Izuku, getting really annoyed. He then pushed open the door to reveal the room the couple shared. The room was about half a room bigger than the others. It had a large queen-size bed along with lots of posters of movies, games, books, and heroes strung up on the wall. It also had a desk with a PC and 2 laptops on it. Hanging on the wall next to it was a large 50-inch flat-screen TV. The room had a bookshelf and a large dresser with all their clothes in it. That wasn't in the closet. They even had another smaller desk that had a mirror and a little bit of makeup whenever the girls wanted to wear some, since sometimes they wanted to feel more feminine. The last thing in the room that could be seen was some light workout equipment and the door to the bathroom. Wow, your room looks so nice. Not only that, but girls, you two have to work on your makeup selection, said Mina, pointing at the little on the table. It was eyeliner, lipstick, and some blush along with a brush and hair ties. We aren't really into makeup. Besides, Izuku likes our own natural beauty, said Ryuko. Okay, I can understand that. But still don't mean I ain't gonna try and help. Us girls gotta stick together, she said, grinning. They all left their room while Siro tapped Ida's mouth and dragged him to his room, then tapped him in by tapping the door. No one complained. After that, they all ordered food since the fridge was empty and they had to go grocery shopping. Man, this orange chicken is amazing, said Denki, enjoying it. Meh, Izuku's is better, said Rumi, munching on hers. Wait, Izuku, you know how to cook, said Kirishima, looking over at his friend. MHM, my mom taught me everything I know, and now I cook and feed these two, he said, gesturing to Rumi and Ryuko. Oh, that's so sweet. Do you two make him anything? Said Ochako, thinking the idea of cooking something for your significant other adorable and sweet. Everyone then saw both girls look down as storm clouds formed over their heads. They can't cook, said Izuku, like it all. The storm clouds got darker and started to rain. Ryuko looked down at her food in disappointment. She actually really wanted to make Izuku something delicious. She wanted to show him she was a good mate and could provide something for him just as much as he does himself. I need to ask Emmy to teach me, or maybe Lunch Rush. I want to make him something that will make him happy, she thought to herself. For Rumi, she knew she never could. She asked her mom, and her mother explained it's a curse of their family. None of them knew how to cook, nor could even if given a cookbook or a chef to teach. Hey guys, I have a great idea we can all do. Let's watch a movie together. It'd be super manly, said Kirishima. I don't see why not. It'd be fun, said Momo. Soon discussions began, and Izuku suggested a movie they never heard of, A Nightmare on Elm Street. They all agreed, and 45 minutes later, they all regretted it. It was either screaming or hiding from the movie. The only ones not affected was Izuku and Tokoyami, given they both like horror movies. For Izuku, he was having to hold Rumi and Ryuko, who couldn't handle horror movies no matter how hard they tried. They would always end up using Izuku to protect them as they screamed in fear. Izuku was in the gym doing some lifts while wrapped around his waist was a chain that was holding 500 pounds of weights. He was using the bare minimum of OFA to do this and force his body to work harder with limited power. Come on, bro, you just got to do 30 more, said Kairish, trying to encourage his friend. Oh boy, only 30 more. That just makes it hurt more since my body now knows how many I have to do, said Izuku as he lifted his body up again. Rumi got done with her leg presses and looked over towards Izuku and decided to give him some encouragement. Walking over with a slight sway of her hips, she got near him and stood up on her elongated toes and whispered in his ear. "If you beat your record, I'll let you do whatever you want of me tonight. You can put a collar on me for all I care," she said with a heavy blush, and could feel herself getting turned on. Hearing that, Izuku's grip on the bar tightened so much that the metal groaned and warped before he started to pull himself up even faster. Letting out a small giggle, she walked off but stopped when she saw Ryuko in her dragon form. Breath out a large breath of fire from her mouth. She couldn't help but smile when she remembered the day Izuku helped her unlock the ability to breath fire. Flashback 4 years ago. It's only been a year into their training with Gran Torino, and sometimes Night Eye when he isn't busy. They have been making very good progress, but they hit a small snag because Ryuko wants to try and breath fire, but nothing she did worked. "Nothing works," snapped Ryuko in her dragon form. She is usually always calm and collected, but after years of nothing but complete and utter failure every time. Ryuko calmed down. "Why should I? Nothing works, and my quirk just makes it so hard for me to control everything, and you wouldn't understand what this is like. I wish I was quirkless like you," said Izuku before she cut him off. Complete silence was all that was heard in the gym, and Ryuko's brain finally registered what she said, and her eyes went wide as she looked over at Izuku, who looked hurt as B looked away. "I. No, it's okay. I'll just leave you be. I don't understand what it's like to have a quirk." He then turned and walked away. While trying to keep his tears in, he promised himself he'd never cry in front of others, ever again. "Wait, Izuku, please, I'm sorry," she said, feeling horrible for losing her composure and letting her dragon instincts control her. But even worse, she felt absolutely disgusted in herself for snapping at him for something like that. He heard her, but kept walking. Looking down at the ground, she began to cry as her body slowly shrunk to her human form and just broke down crying. Why did I say that? What kind of friend am I for saying something so heartless?" she said between tears. Rumi looked at her, then to Izuku, who just finally disappeared from sight. She wanted to help them both, but deep down knew this was something they would have to fix themselves, and she would just have to push them in the right direction. She walked up to her and sat next to her before she pulled her into a hug. "Tell me what's going on. This isn't like you. I just wanted to breath fire like dragons do in fantasy. But nothing I did seemed to work, and after years of nothing but failure, I snapped at him and said things I didn't mean to," she said while trying to stop crying. Rumi continued to hold her as she cried. She felt horrible for saying those things to Izuku when it wasn't his fault. "Look, once you calm down, go talk to him. This is something you two have to fix. All I can do is give you a push," said Rumi. Ryuko nodded her head and wiped her tears away before she stood up and walked down the hall where she last saw Izuku. For Rumi, she decided to stay in the gym. It took Ryuko a little while, but she did eventually find Izuku, and it hurt her for what she saw. He was sitting on the roof of UA, crying as he looked off at the city in the distance. Slowly, she walked towards him while making sure not to make any noise as she debated what exactly to say. I guess Takeo and Kaken were right. I can't do anything, and I'm just a worthless Deku," he said quietly to himself, unaware that Ryuko was behind him and heard him. Hearing running footsteps, he wasn't able to turn around before he was wrapped up in a tight hug as he felt hot. Wet tears hit his shoulder. Turning his head, he saw short blonde hair and yellow reptilian eyes. "Ryuko," he said, "you're not worthless, Izuku, and whoever thinks you are is wrong. You're the strongest and bravest person I know, and I'm so sorry for what I said earlier. I was angry at myself and lashed out at you," she said. He smiled lightly and gently patted her hand. "It's okay, Ryuko. You didn't mean it. Even so, I said it, and I'm so sorry. You're me and Rumi's best friend, and you've done so much for us, and yet I lashed out at you for just trying to help me. I'm sorry, and if there is anything I can do to make it up for it, please let me know," she said. Izuku was silent for a little bit. It still hurt him that she said that, but could tell that she was genuinely sorry for what she said. Turning around, he faced her with a smile on his face. "Just keep being my friend and promise you won't say that again, and we are even," he said. Ryuko looked at him, slightly shocked that he was forgiving her this easily. In her opinion, she deserved worse, and yet he simply asked her to not say that again and to keep being his friend. She didn't know it at that moment, but he seemed to radiate in her mind, and her dragon instincts marked him as her mate. After that, they all went back into the gym, and Izuku was asking Ryuko questions to help him possibly allow her to breath fire. Okay, so you've eating spicy things, talking to people with fire-breathing quirks and fire quirks in general, and you've even tried to eat coals. Yet nothing worked, said Izuku. She nodded her head in sheer embarrassment while staring at the ground. She couldn't bear the thought of looking him in the eyes about this. Have you ever gotten a CT scan in your dragon form to see your organs? Said Izuku. CT scan for my organs? No, can't say I have, said Ryuko. In that case, do you even know which organ you're trying to emit flames from? Said Izuku. No, I don't, she said before her mind began racing in thought. Ryuko had a dumbstruck expression as an epiphany sprawled into her mind. She had no clue how flames were supposed to be generated from her body. She just assumed that if she tried hard enough, her body would just work itself out, like learning to walk. She thought that either her lungs or her stomach would do something to allow her to make fire. But now, the more she thinks about it, if that did happen, it would just hurt her. Ryuko then realized that she would need a separate organ to handle the flames or something of the sorts. Her mom nor dad had it, so it wasn't very likely she would either. Midoriya then began talking, pulling her out of her thoughts. Well, that gives us a direction, at least. First, we ensure your body has what it needs to breathe fire, and the fastest and cheapest way is for me and Rumi to look for the organ. And how will we do that? Said Rumi with a raised eyebrow. Ryuko will open her mouth, and we look inside for something that most likely looks like tubes. If she had that, then it's most likely for her to breathe fire, said Izuku. So Ryuko, if you okay with it? Oh, sure, she said as her body started to grow in size, and soon she was a little bit bigger than an SUV and was close to 18 feet long. Now, in her dragon form, she lowered her head and opened her maw for them to look inside her mouth. Of course, he was a little nervous since he was basically sticking his head in a literal dragon's mouth, but he knew that Ryuko wouldn't do anything. Izuku pulled out a small flashlight from his belt bandolier. Starting from the inside of the right cheek, he worked backwards. It wasn't long before Rumi spotted something and pointed at what caught her attention. Wait, what's that? Izuku pointed the flashlight to where the girl gestured and noticed the same thing. A tube-like appendage was jutting out from inside her cheek, trailing all the way back inside her throat, and at its front end, directed towards them, was a small hole. Izuku pointed the light to the opposite cheek to see if the same thing was there, and it was. Hi, Oyu Hainaming. Did you find something? Said Ryuko, while her jaw was starting to hurt from keeping it open. Yup, I believe so. So physical speaking, you should be able to breath fire. Now all we have to is figure out why you weren't able to before, said Izuku. Maybe it's because it's a muscle she has never used. I mean, when I got my quirk, it took me months to learn how to use my rabbit ears, said Rumi as she made her ears start to wiggle. Izuku felt his heart squeeze for how cute it was to watch. Ryuko almost gasped, Helly. Really, words couldn't describe how happy she felt at that moment. Yep, and if I was to guess, giving their tubes, you probably have a gland either in your cheeks or somewhere in your throat that stores the fuel. Though we need to next figure out what your body would use to fuel it, said Izuku. Gasoline or napalm would work, said Rumi. Rumi, no, said Ryuko. Izuku recomposed himself from Rumi's insane suggestion. Hey, as I was saying, it would be good if you could get the sensation first before you practice. So considering we're reasonably sure you have a gland that stores the fuel you use for fire, your body must create that fuel from something. Ryuko spoke up as she realized where he was going with this, most likely from food. I mean, that would make the most sense. That or we have her drink gasoline, said Rumi. Rumi, no, I'd rather not. And what's with this gas thing, said Ryuko. Hey, I'm not on the same level as Izuku, so I'm just suggesting what I know, said Rumi. He nodded back. That wouldn't be a smart idea. But with food in mind, the best way to help you breathe fire is to force your body to do that involuntarily, so you know what it feels like. And the best way to do that is dash. Ryuko chimed in again after looking horrified at what Rumi suggested, is to stuff that gland with so much fuel that it has no choice but to expel it from my body. Exactly. So all we need to do now is have you eat a massive amount of meat in your dragon, given your anatomy is probably different, and that dragons are carnivores, so it'd make the most sense that meat is what they use as fuel, said Izuku. So now we just need a massive amount of meat for me to eat. How will we do that? She said since neither her or Rumi could pay for that, and she was sure Izuku's dad isn't going to pay it either. Izuku was about to say something when his phone went off, and he looked at it. Sadistic rat. Order is on its way. Never mind. Nezu ordered it, said Izuku. An hour later, Izuku cooked lots and lots of beef, which Ryuko ate, and now she was on the ground stuffed to the brim and groaning in pain. Ugh, everything hurts. She groaned out in pain as she laid on the ground, and Izuku and Rumi gently rubbed her maw and head to comfort her. I'm so sorry, Ryuko. This was such a stupid idea, said Izuku, feeling horrible since she's in pain because of him. It's okay. I'd rather try something and it failed than never try in the first place, she said, trying to comfort him. After saying that, she felt a warmth spreading through her body. Her chest, her neck, the insides of her cheeks. Something's happening, Ryuko said in a slight panic as the feeling increased in intensity and her cheeks started to grow. Izuku was panicking. What is it happening? He said, standing up, trying to figure out what to do. Ryuko, what's going on? Said Rumi. I can feel my cheeks swelling. Ryuko stammered as they grew more and her jaw started to hurt. Rumi, we need to move, said Izuku as he took her hand and ran off to take cover. Ryuko was glad he did. She slowly stood up on all fours, and instinctually her jaw opened as wide as she could, broader than ever before in her life. She could feel it unhinge, giving the upper and lower parts of her mouth the distance to stay out of harm's way. A greenish fluid-like substance was ejected from her tubes at high speed, shooting out a small distance until there was a spark, and from that spark erupted massive flames, reaching out several meters from where Ryuko was standing in one great wave of fire, covering area larger than she was if she spread her wings out. After a couple of seconds, it ended, the sparks faded out, and all that remained were the smoky fumes they left behind, and some smoke trailing out her mouth. Ryuko was stunned for a moment, her jaw hanging open as she struggled to process the reality of what had just happened, of what she had accomplished. All her life, she wanted to breathe fire like dragons from myth, yet everything she did failed, and now here she was, breathing fire like a dragon. Words couldn't even begin to describe how happy she was. That was awesome, screamed Rumi, running over to her and hug her massive head. Ryuko, you did it. You finally breathed fire. I did. She shouted as she lifted her head up in the air, with Rumi still holding on. That was amazing, Ryuko, said Izuku, walking forward. She turned and looked at him, and that same feeling from earlier came even stronger. Before she knew it, she shrunk down to her human form and wrapped her arms around him. Thank you, Izuku. You have no idea how much this means to me, she said with a smile. No problem, Ryuko. That's what friends do, he said with a smile. Flashback over. Rumi was pulled out of her thoughts when Izuku dropped the weights and smiled. I beat my record. Now I just gotta work with my quirk's new abilities. Bro, I still can't believe your quirk lets you make those black tentacle things. Make smoke, predict moves, store momentum, and float. Your quirk is so broken, said Kirishima. It's difficult in all honesty. With my quirk evolving to do all these things, I now have to try and learn how to control all of them at the same time. Plus, Recovery Girl is still trying to figure out why my quirk evolved, said Izuku, telling both the truth and a half-lie. Man, I can't even imagine that. Not only are you learning to use your quirk for combat, but now you have a bunch of new abilities that you have to learn as fast as possible. Anyway, I can help, bro, said Kirishima. Just being my training partner is good enough, he said before he looked at his phone. SHD. We got an hour before school starts. Hearing this, they all ran off to their rooms and took showers, then put on clean clothes before grabbing something simple and fast to eat before they ran off to school. Once everyone arrived at their seats, they were all waiting for the homeroom teacher to show up. Just then the door opened and Mrs. Joke walked in. Good morning, class. We have important things to discuss, she said while having a couple bandages on her. Mrs. Aizawa, shouldn't you be resting? I mean you to get hurt, said Ochako. Also, is Mr. Aizawa okay? I just had a couple bruises and broken bones, but I'm fine for my husband. I had to strap him to his bed to make sure he rests at least till the sports festival, which is only 2 weeks away, said Mrs. Joke. Wouldn't it be smarter to cancel the event altogether? Said Todoroki. If I had my way, I would, but given how popular the event is and the fact the whole country and some others will be watching, we don't really have a choice. Though this year we'll be stepping up security to ensure everyone's safety, she said. Everyone nodded at that. Now for the sports festival, it's a chance for you to both show the public and show heroes what you're made of, since after the sports festival, you'll all be interning under a hero for a week and a half. During that time, you'll do actual patrols and possibly some combat. You'll also get to see actual hero work, Mrs. Joke said. So the better we do, the better our chances to get chosen by a popular hero are, said Denki. Yes and no. Remember, the heroes will only get a vote for 2 students, and even if you win, it's not guaranteed that a hero would want you to intern under them. It completely depends on how well you do and how you handle the situation, said Mrs. Joke. Now, you all get the next 2 weeks off from school, and we highly recommend you spend it training for the festival's 3 events. Now get going, she said before leaving. Everyone began talking and packing up. Izuku, Rumi, and Ryuko all headed to the door first since they wanted to get as much combat training as they could before the sports festival. Opening the door, they were greeted by a huge crowd of people. Who the hell are all of you? Said Rumi, a little annoyed. We're from 1B, the class you made look weak since you fought some villains and got fame, said a student. Before the arguing could even start, Izuku heard a voice he hasn't heard in years. Deku. It was Katsuki Bakugo, who was glaring at him with pure hatred. Catch Dash, don't you dare call me that. Not after the SHD you pulled, you quirkless Dash. Now glaring at him, Izuku countered, everything that happened was because of you and everyone else. Don't blame me. TCH, you just couldn't handle me putting you in your place. Also, I heard that you apparently had a quirk. He then stepped forward, being an inch shorter than him. He grabbed Izuku by the collar of his shirt. I bet you enjoyed thinking you were better than me. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Then he got a very vague image in his head of people standing above him with bloody fists and sickening grins. Before Katsuki could say anything else, 2 pairs of hands grabbed his wrists, and they were both Rumi and Ryuko who were glaring at him. Leave our boyfriend alone, said Rumi in a cold tone that promised pain. Keep your hands off him, growled Ryuko as some scales started to form on her arms. Off you stupid cants. I don't have time to D-dash. He was cut off when Izuku's hand moved in and grabbed him by his throat, startling him. Don't you ever insult them again, said Izuku as green and white lightning arched around him. Tisich, he smacked Izuku's hand away and a couple pops came from his hand. You're more cocky than I remember Deku. Don't think now that you have a couple ES and friends that you amount to anything. You will always be a Deku, and I'll always remind you that's all you'll be. He turned and started to walk away before glaring at Izuku one last time. Coming this sports festival, I'll kick your ES asses, and I'll beat you in front of all of Japan to show the world that you are just a worthless Deku. Watching him walk away, Rumi and Ryuko were growling in anger for what he just said to Izuku. Izuku watched Katsuki walk away, and a vague memory came back to when he said goodbye to him and how he just insulted him. I'll be sure to kick your butt, he said as he felt one for all rile up in anger Bakugo. All the girls in 1A were in Izuku, Rumi, and Ryuko's room. Mina said they needed to spend some girl time together. While I always forget your guys' room is bigger than the rest of ours, said Mina, sitting on the chair next to the desk. It really helps us, so we can all put our stuff in here, said Rumi with a fond smile as her ears perked up, showing her happiness. Yep, especially since we get to have our bigger bed in here, so we can cuddle, said Ryuko. All right, so how's everyone's training going? Said Momo as she just remembered she wanted to ask this. Mine is going well, and I was able to decrease the time it takes for me to make things by 13%. I'm doing good. I finally figured out how to use my acid as impromptu skates to slide around, said Mina. I learned a better way to use my tongue for combat thanks to Izuku helping me out, though I do wish he knew the terms of hold. Back, said Tsu. He was holding back, said Rumi. You should see when we train, we leave bruises on each other, or sometimes torn muscles, or in even more serious cases, broken bones. The girls looked at her in horror. If I didn't know the context for that, that would sound so much worse, said Toru. It's just how him, and Ryuko have always trained. We don't hold back when we spar, but that doesn't mean when we're done, he doesn't dote on us and make us feel special, said Rumi. The girls giggled at that while Kyoko rolled her eyes. She wasn't for all this lovey-dovey stuff. Then the corner of her eyes caught something. It was a small wooden box. She decided to see what it was and snuck over and opened it. It was a box full of gold. Ryuko saw this in the corner of her eyes, and her slitted pupils narrowed and her teeth bared almost immediately. Before anyone could do anything, she moved and shoved Kyoko away while holding the box behind her and let out a growl. Her dragon instincts wouldn't let anyone but Izuku and Rumi touch this. It's mine, she growled out as her nails turned into claws and scales began to form on her arms. Whoa, Ryuko, calm down, said Rumi, immediately moving in and rubbed her shoulders, trying to calm her down. The girls looked at Ryuko and couldn't understand why she was acting like that, but thankfully Rumi explained why for them. She's a dragon, remember? Her quirk has passive traits like an obsession with shiny things, especially gold. It also works the same as how she marked Izuku. No matter what happens, even if they break up, she will never stop loving him no matter what, said Rumi as Ryuko began to calm down. I've heard of animal-like quirks causing stuff like this, but I didn't know it was that strong, said Momo. Depends on the animal. It took her years to control her instincts. And well, for me, it wasn't too bad. Until I went ahead at the same time as Ryuko, and we both had strong urges towards Izuku, said Rumi. Yeah, we did, said Ryuko, finally having control over her emotions, though the wait was worth it. Yeah, said Rumi with a blush as she gained a slight nosebleed. It was. Oh, I bet you three have lots of fun, said Mina, as she pulled out a pair of HNECFFS, especially since I found these here under some paper. Rumi's face froze, and her eyes were blank staring at them. Ryuko looked no better and wanted to die from sheer embarrassment. You two's embarrassment is adorable. I bet Izuku loves to see it and tease you, said Ochako. Yeah, he does, said Ryuko. Well, it must be fun to have a boyfriend who loves you for you. But do you two ever worry he might cheat? Said Toru with a raised eyebrow. No, he's Demuel, so he's only Yali attracted to us, so we don't have to worry. Though that doesn't mean we don't like girls flirting with him, said Rumi. I've heard of that, but never thought I'd meet someone who's actually like that, said Momo. That's cute. It's also nice knowing he'd never cheat. Though at the same time, that same logic applies to both of you, since you've marked him, Karo, said Sue. Mina heard this, and a grin formed on her face as idea entered her mind. They've been working non-stop for a week and a half. She wanted a break, so she decided to suggest something. I have a great idea. Let's go to the beach. The beach, said Ochako with a raised eyebrow. And Mitchum, think about how much fun it'll be. We've been training all week and need a day to relax, said Mina. I do have to admit, it would be nice to relax, said Momo. Man, I don't want to go, said Rumi. Me neither. Too many guys or girls stare at me and will try to hit on me. It's too much work, said Ryuko. Oh, but then I guess you don't want to see Izuku in a swimsuit, Mina said, making both women freeze. I mean, think about it. Seeing him come out of the water with his running down and well-built body and showing his muscles and scars. Nosebleeds started with both Rumi and Ryuko, and Ochako got a slight nosebleed, but looked away. She will admit he's very handsome and nice, but she won't try and hit on him. That's something you don't do to a friend's boyfriend or girlfriend. Or both of you laying on the ground, and he walks up behind you too and rubs in some lotion while being unable to take his eyes off you too. We are going to the beach. They both yelled, standing up and running off to go get him. They weren't going to turn down having Izuku turn a putty just seeing them. Meanwhile, in the gym, Izuku was training using float, FA Gene, smokescreen, and black whip. He had to get better with these quirks. He only had a couple days to get better with them. He didn't have to train with danger sense since it was a passive quirk. He shot black whip out and pulled himself forward before he kicked the air, flying higher up until his foot glowed red and they touched the roof while also black whip to anchor the ground. He then shot down as if he was using 30% and shot downwards, while sending another tendril out and pulled himself just before he smacked into the ground. As he flew, he forced his eyes to try and track everything as he bounced off the support beams that were built like an obstacle course for him. Once he reached the end of the course, he landed on the ground and pulled up his shirt to wipe the sweat off his face. He's been training for the last 4 hours, or ever since he woke up, and gave both Rumi and Ryuko a kiss before he left for the gym. He was about to head to the weight lifting part of the gym when the doors were slammed open and both said women were looking at him with a certain type of hunger. Beach now. Oh, this feels amazing, said Mina in her blue bikini as she looked out over the ocean. Luckily for all of them, they found a slightly less populated part of the beach and went to that part. I must agree this feels nice, said Sue, wearing a white and green striped one piece. It's been a long time since I've been to the beach. I can't even remember when I was last at the beach, said Ochako with an orange bikini that had a flower pattern on it, and the bottom part was more of a skirt. This is going to be manly, yelled Kirishima, running to the water with a board. Kirishima, stop. You must stretch and put on sunscreen, yelled Ida, chasing after him. Soon almost everyone was present except for the couple, but then they saw them show up. Rumi had her hair up in a ponytail, much like Ryuko always put the back of her hair. She also was wearing a white bikini that had a slight undercut showing the bottom of her, while a string held them up. Ryuko wore a bright red bikini with a gold and black trim on it. She also let her hair down instead of her usual ponytail. She kept it in. Lastly was Izuku, who had black and green swimming trunks and was wearing a shirt as he carried everything, his long white and black hair down, and it was in a very similar style to his father's. Good, now that we are all here, let's set up our part of the beach and get this party started. Cheer, Toru. Izuku walked over and dropped the 2 coolers B was carrying, while Shoji carried the others along with bags full of towels. Thank you, Shoji. I could have used my quirk, but I feel like some officer would have gotten angry. Meanwhile, in Hosu, a dog-headed cop sneezed while filing a report about some lady who accidentally used her quirk when she got scared. He then put this as a mark on her ID so that the police will know she used her quirk illegally. It's no problem, Aizawa. Besides, I like to help my classmates, he said, putting the stuff down. Just call me Izuku. It makes it easier for everyone, he said. Shoji nodded his head and put everything down while they both organized the stuff to a somewhat decent matter. As Izuku was setting up the umbrellas, he saw that Kyoko was off far away from everyone and was wearing a shirt way too big for her. That was covering up her body. He told Shoji he'll be back and walked over towards Kyoko. For Kyoko, she was sitting far away from her class, way too self-conscious about her body to join her classmates. Hey, Jiro, you doing okay? Said Izuku, walking towards her. She looked up at him and just nodded her head. Yeah, I'm okay. Then why aren't you with everyone? You're sitting over here, being a loner, he said with a raised eyebrow. She just looked away. Sighing, he crouched down in front of her. What's wrong? Nothing. Jiro, talk to me, or I will drag you and throw you in the ocean, said Izuku with the same SHD-eating grin his father had. Kyoko shivered at that. She was 100% sure he would do that and have his girlfriends help him. I'm just self-conscious to go over with them. I don't have a girl's dream body. I got nothing to show, said Kyoko, showing her self-doubt. Izuku arched an eyebrow at that. He may not be attracted to her or any of the other girls, but he had to admit they were all appealing in their own way. I wouldn't say that. Every one woman is appealing in your own way. That includes you, Jiro. She felt her cheeks heat for a moment as she looked at him. If Rumi and Ryuko didn't tell me you were Demi-UL, I'd think you're flirting with me, she joked. Ha ha. No, I'm not flirting. Just being honest. Besides, we were all friends here. So come on and come swimming with us, he said, standing up and offering his hand to lift her up. Kyoko sighed and took the offered hand. She stood up and followed him to the beach. Once Izuku got to the class's spot on the beach, he grabbed his shirt and took it off, getting lots of girls' attention and some guys' attention, though for the last one was for 2 different reasons. Izuku's body was well built, showing his years of training. He was very lean with very dense muscles that were still growing along with his body. He was the perfect combination of muscle mass and flexibility. His body also had a couple of scars on it, making him to the girls. Wow. Not gonna lie, Rumi, Ryuko, A part of me is kind of jealous, said Ochako before she shook her head and stopped staring. Some girls did the same, while others on the beach were openly eyeing him. For Rumi and Ryuko, they were the worst for that. Hey, Isa bro, come in the water and join us, yelled Kirishima. Coming, said Izuku as he did some quick stretches and took a single step before his girlfriend stopped him. Izu, said Rumi with a smile, you need to help us put on some sunscreen first. MHM, but make sure you get it all over us, said Ryuko with the same smile. Letting out a chuckle, he walked over to the towels and found theirs. Both girls laid down on their stomachs so he can put sunscreen on them. Izuku popped the cap and began to rub it into their backs, which they both enjoyed greatly. As he was doing this, he couldn't help but love their figures. They had perfect bodies in his eyes, and he loved to see them whenever he could, which was a lot, especially with Rumi and her drive. As he continued to rub in the sunscreen, he soon trailed his hands down lower and lower. He felt them tense up giving that, and he saw that Rumi's ears were twitching, showing she was getting excited. Deciding to tease them a bit, once he got to their legs, he made 2 tiny tendrils of black whip and began to tease them. The sharp gasps from them both were music to his ears, and he kept the same look as when he started, a concentrated look with a smile. It wasn't long before he heard Rumi let out a tiny dash, but she immediately covered her mouth as she felt black whip go deeper in her and grew slightly bigger. The worst part for her is that she couldn't let out any noise or make it obvious since they were in public. But on that same coin, it excited her so much more since they could get caught at any moment. Ryuko wasn't faring any better. She bit her arm as she tried to stop that her hips were starting to shift backwards and forwards, wanting him to go deeper or just put his in her and tame her. Izuku increased the pace. He was using black whip, and it was driving them insane. But before they could fully enjoy it, he stopped and pulled it out and lifted his hands from their legs. Okay, and I'm done, he said with a smile. They looked at him with red faces and eyes glazed in both in anger. Izuku then used black whip and ate off the ends before the cork disappeared. He then leaned forward and whispered huskily, "That's payback for blue balling me the other day." He then just stood up and walked away, leaving them both laying on the towel, turned on and very dash, along with blue balled. "We are gonna him tonight," said Ryuko. "No, we need to do it sooner than that," said Rumi as she fought down her blush. With Izuku, he jumped in the water and began to swim, while silently enjoying that he got his revenge on his girlfriends for blue balling him the other day. As he swam, he didn't get far before someone splashed him. Looking up, he saw Tokoyami strangling Dark Shadow for doing that. "I can play this game too, Tokoyami," said Izuku, standing up and sliding his hair back so it wasn't his face. And now, Waigo. He was cut off when Izuku splashed a massive amount of water at him, making him go underwater for a moment before he stood back up. Izuku couldn't help but start laughing at his friend. He was slowly pulling him out of his anti-social shell. A couple hours went by, and Izuku just left to stand with a bunch of grilled food for himself, Rumi, and Ryuko. As he was walking back to them, he felt someone tap his shoulder. Turning his head, he saw a pretty woman who looked to be maybe a year or two older than him. She was standing with a bunch of her friends, and they were all looking at him with blushes. "Hi, cutie. I was wondering if you'd like to join us over here, and maybe you can help put some sunscreen on us," said the woman. As she didn't hide, she was checking him up and down. "Oh, I'm actually busy and with my friends and girlfriends, so I can't," sorry, said Izuku. The girls didn't even seem fazed, as the leader leaned forward a bit to show her cleavage. "Oh, come on. I'm sure me and my friends could give you a much better time than your girlfriend." Izuku didn't even bat an eye to the open, UAL flirting. He was about to say something when 2 hands grabbed his shoulders and yanked him backwards, so he was behind them. It was Rumi and Ryuko, and they were pissed. Ryuko ended up doing a partial transformation, and her forearms were covered. In scales, she had her wings out, and she grew her tail, which was currently slamming on the ground, marking her territory. Rumi was straight up glaring death at those women. Her foot smashed into the ground so hard, it created a small crater under her. "He's ours now, go away," they both said in anger as their animal instincts were screaming at them to defend their mate. The girl took a step back for a moment before she stood her ground and glared at them. "Who are you two to talk? All I see is some ugly rabbit and some disgusting creature that thinks she's a girl. On the outside, they didn't seem fazed, but on the inside, those words hit them hard, since that's what they were always bullied about. The woman was about to continue, but froze when Izuku stepped forward and his eyes glowed green and his hair stood up in the same as father's does. "Don't you ever insult my girlfriends," he said in a dark tone, glaring at the woman. "What? YSH dash." She froze when Izuku released killing intent as his glare hardened. "Leave." The woman nodded her head and scampered away with her friends following her. Izuku sighed. He didn't like women like that, or guys who hit on Rumi and Ryuko. He really struggles with that one. Turning around, he saw both of them staring at him. They had blushes on their face, and their pupils were in the shape of hearts. Before he could even get a word out, they grabbed his arms and dragged him away towards one of the private changing rooms. "We'll calm down, you two." "No, now," they said as he was dragged into the changing room, and he couldn't even respond before a pair of lips smashed onto his. Then his trunks were ripped off, and a hot mouth wrapped around his member with razor-sharp teeth gently scraping it. Izuku just let out an eternal sigh. They weren't going to stop now, so he just went in. Izuku stood up and did a couple of stretches to help loosen up his muscles. He then crouched down and started to stretch his legs and lower back before he stood back up and cracked his back to loosen himself up more. "Bro, how do you do the splits? It's not normal for guys to do that," said Kirishima. "My teachers had me do them to make sure I was extremely flexible and didn't just rely on my quirk's overwhelming strength," said Izuku, as he was debating on putting his hair up or not. "How that actually makes sense. I might have to start learning how to stretch like that, since I usually just train to get stronger and have more stamina," he said. "That is good, but remember that won't always be enough. You will also have to learn strategies and how to fight, because one day you may end up meeting someone you just can't outpunch or outlast in a fight," said Izuku. Kirishima had stars in his eyes as he looked at Izuku in a whole new light. So manly. Izuku couldn't help but sweat drop at what he said. It wasn't really manly, just common knowledge. They both then walked into the waiting room with the rest of the class, and Izuku was immediately greeted by Ryuko and Rumi, who hugged him. "After all these years of watching the sports festival, we now get to finally participate in it," said Ryuko. "It will be very fun. Hopefully we all get to make it to the finals and be able to fight," said Rumi, looking at him. "Well, in that case, you two better make it to the finals, since I'm planning to win this," said Izuku. Rumi gave him a smirk. "You're so on. I will win this and finally beat you after you finally got a handle on your quirk." Ryuko giggled at that. Rumi used to always win spars with Izuku and win, but after he got OFA and learned how to properly control it, that quickly changed with him winning more and more spars until he started to win almost all of them. "I look forward to it, Rumi. Though you might want to get taller, so I can actually see you," he teased. A tick mark formed on her forehead, and she punched his stomach, but he tightened the muscles to just take the blow and it not hurt. "I will get you back for that, Izuku," she said with a heated glare. He grabbed her cheeks and smashed his lips into hers, making her go wide-eyed as a blush formed on her cheeks. "I'll hold you to that, Rumi," he said before turning and walking off to talk to Tokoyami. And being, why at times like this, she grumbled as she looked away with her ears falling back and her foot started to thump. "You know he loves to tease you," said Ryuko. "I know, but still, it doesn't have to turn me on," she said with a blush. Ryuko giggled. "I think he did that as payback for the beach incident where you almost got us caught," she whispered. No one but Rumi and Kyoka heard that, which made Kyoka's face go nuclear as images entered her mind, and she tried to force them out. "Welcome everyone to this year's sports festival," yelled Present Mike, riling up the crowd. "This year we have some students who survived a run-in with real-life villains. Not only that, but they even beat back the villains until backup arrived." The crowd cheered loudly. "Well, without further ado, let me introduce Class 1A, said Class walked out of the tunnels and were heading for the field in front of a podium where they were told beforehand to stand. Now next on our list, we have Class 1B. They are our other aspiring hero candidates. They may not have fought villains, but they showed UA they are worthy of being in the heroics course," yelled Present Mike. The crowd cheered, but it obviously wasn't as loud as it was for 1A. Waiting for them to stand near 1A, present mic continued. Next up, we have the support course. Thanks to these students, our hero course students are able to fight villains and stay alive. If IT wasn't thanks to them both here and in the world, then lots of heroes wouldn't be here. The support course walked put and the crowd cheered, but it wasn't very loud. Next up, we have management and general studies. The first one is self-explanatory, but it's thanks to these students that our future will be secure since they will help hold society up in a different way. They all walked out and about 1/9 of the crowd cheered, which did hurt some of them. But for a certain Ash Blonde, it pissed him off to no end. Now for this year's announcer and referee. Midnight. Lots of guys cheered, but the ones with girlfriends or wives were immediately punched. Even though lots of them were staring as well, they then hit them again when they pointed it out. Hello everyone, I'm so glad to see all of you here. But let's cut to the chase. You all came here to see this year's sports festival, not us heroes talk. The crowd cheered loudly. Good, then let's get this started with some words of encouragement from this year's representative. Izuku Aizawa, he said with a deadpan expression similar to his father minus the shaggy beard. Get going, Izuku, said Ryuko, pushing him forward. Grumbling under his breath, he sighed and started to walk to the stage. You got this, young Aizawa, said All Might appearing by his side, giving him his famous smile. Thanks, he thought. If you want, I can give you a speech from a great movie I watched. It was made in America, and I gotta say it was really good, and you should watch it, said Yoichi. Give me the speech in a minute. I want to say something myself first, thought Izuku as he walked up on the stage, and Midnight whispered something. Good luck. He couldn't help but give her a small smile before he stood in front of the entire stadium with well over 100,000 people. He has been training for this day to show the world that he was All Might's successor and that the world will be safe in the next generation's hands. Hello, everyone. I'm here to give you all a motivational speech, and I shall, but first I think I should say something. Ever since the death of All Might, we have been struggling to stand back up on our feet. Crime has increased, and it's plain as day that things have happened that have made it easier for criminals and villains to get away with crimes. Not only that, but our society has a sick fascination with strong quirks, and if you don't have one, you are looked down upon or not even seen as a human. Japan and the world are going through hard times given all of this and the fact that villains are getting more bold. But that won't stop us. It is our duty to stand up to them, to show them that we aren't scared of them. We shall show these villains that we won't let them do as they please. The crowd started to cheer. Izuku then heard Yoichi speak, and he copied every word he said. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. The crowd cheered even louder. Izuku knew what he was going to say next was extremely dangerous and will paint a massive target on his back and would make the world have extremely high expectations for him. But he had to do it. The world needs a new hero to look up to, and he promised All Might that he will be a successor and protect the world. The world will soon be in our hands to protect, and I promise you all we will not disappoint you. And I shall also make this declaration and promise. He took a deep breath to calm his hammering heart. I shall rise up to the challenge to be All Might's successor. Given how hyped the crowd was, they didn't fully register that, but just kept cheering. Plus Ultra, yelled Izuku. Plus Ultra, everyone screamed. Izuku smiled and walked off the stage, leaving it to Midnight. That was an amazing speech, Izuku Aizawa. Now on to the first event. Obstacle course. So he thinks himself of being All Might's successor. We shall see about that, said Endeavor. Oh, come on, calm down, you overgrown lighter. He probably said that to hype the crowd up more, said Hawks, walking up to him. Shut your mouth, Hawks, I'm not in the mood. Oh, sorry, didn't know men could have periods. Thought it was only woman, said Hawks while munching on popcorn. He immediately had to dodge a swipe from Endeavor, who was glaring at him. Okay, fine. I'll SD dash and start. Both heroes immediately looked at the field and saw everyone start a sprint towards the entrance. At the lead was Todoroki, who turned the ground to ice and sprinted past them all. But he didn't get far, as Izuku shot Black Whip out and slingshot himself past him through the tunnel, with Rumi following close behind by hoping from wall to wall. Katsuki tried to fly over, but Ryuko turned in her dragon form and accidentally hit him with her tail, sending him into the ground. Endeavor glared at them, especially Izuku, given what he said. Hawks, on the other hand, was very quiet. The higher-ups ordered him to invite Izuku to work under him. He of course would, but he wasn't going to drag Izuku into this hell. The higher-ups wanted to put a leash on him, and he wasn't going to allow that. It's already bad enough they still have one on him. "Welcome to Robo Inferno," yelled Present Mike. Izuku looked at the massive zero-pointers that were all looking at him and preparing to attack him. Seeing this, he continued to run, using 10%, while also getting his right arm ready to punch the one in front of him. He originally planned to use one of All Might's attacks like he usually does to pay respect to All Might. But he quickly realized that he still has to create his own path, not just become a second All Might. Ragnarok Smash! Black Whip coated his fist, and he smashed it straight into the zero-pointer. The punch only had 20% power, but Izuku learned an amazing trick while training, which allowed him to use a tiny bit of strength, but it hit devastating. Thanks to this, a 20% smash had to the power of 30%, but the Ragnarok Smash doubled the strength of the blow. The zero-pointer took the full blow of that punch. An entire chest region either caved in or blew off from that amount of force. Smiling, he continued to run as fast as he could, leaving the others in the dust as he neared the second obstacle. "You're not beating me, Izuku," yelled Rumi, trying desperately to catch up with him. Ryuko was right behind her and flapped her wings even harder to pass a zero-pointer. Before her eyes, she saw the canyon zone, and here both herself and Izuku will have the best chance at passing it. They both simply flew it, with Izuku using float and Ryuko just flying. Rumi grew a tick mark on her forehead, and she saw a small platform for her to land on. Bracing her legs, she landed and then put every ounce of strength she had in her legs before she shot off with even more speed. She flew through the air and quickly caught up to Ryuko, where she landed on her tail, using it as a springboard to shoot off even faster. Izuku made it past the last part of the second part of the race when he heard someone land behind him. Turning his head, he saw Rumi shoot past him with a cocky smirk. "Come on, Izuku. Is that all you got?" A tick mark formed on his head, and a smirk formed on his face that made a shiver go up Rumi's spine when she saw his smirk. She had to swallow hard to prevent a blush from covering her cheeks. They continued to race, and Rumi was keeping up with Izuku until he spoke. "Catch you later, my chocolate bunny," he said before the ground under him cracked, and he shot off using Black Whip, Fa Gene, and Float to move faster. Izuku rocketed further ahead and landed on the ground. He was about to shoot forward when he saw lumps on the ground, and his danger sense told him to not step on any of these. Taking this warning, he jumped up to 23% and shot forward, leaping over most of them while he used Float to simply fly over them. Rumi was catching up, but she landed on one of them, and her keen ears heard AC dash. Then her instincts screamed at her to move, so she put every ounce of strength in her legs and jumped, but was still caught in the explosion. And they have made it to the mine field. Izuku Aizawa is in the lead and about to cross the finish line, with Rumi Usujiyama behind her, then Ryuko Tatsuma and Katsuki Bakugo racing neck and neck for third place. "Get out of my way, you lizard dash," snarled Katsuki, releasing a massive explosion, shooting past her and getting a dark glare from Ryuko as she remembered the time Izuku told her and Rumi what he remembered Katsuki did to him. Izuku saw the tunnel and moved even faster, and before he knew it, he crossed the finish line. Izuku Aizawa has come in first place, with Rumi Usujiyama in second. He turned to see her panting slightly, but had a smirk on her face. He walked forward and pulled her into a hug. "Good job, Rumi." I wouldn't be able to keep my promise if I didn't do a good job," she said before pecking his cheek, which he returned by kissing her on her lips, which she happily returned as her ears flopped backwards. Third place is Katsuki Bakugo, with Ryuko Tatsuma only half a second behind, coming in at fourth place. Izuku and Rumi turned. They were both met with an extremely angry scowl from Bakugo, who was mainly glaring at Izuku. "I'm gonna kill you next round, Deku." He sneered before stomping off in anger since he got beaten by Deku and some worthless bunnyware. Izuku's eyes darkened as lightning started to arch around him along with Black Whip coiling around his arms getting ready to attack him at a moment's notice. "You two did great," said Ryuko, pulling them out of their thoughts. "You did as well, Ryuko," he said, kissing her as well. They were about to continue talking when Midnight interrupted them. "You all did a great job, but sadly for the second event, only the first 40 students can continue on to the second event. Now to spin the wheel." SHS yelled. Walking up to it, she spun the wheel and waited a minute before it finally came to a stop. "The next event shall be cavalry battles. And not only that, but the person who got first place shall be worth 1,000,000 points." Izuku immediately felt all the stares, and instead of getting scared, he grinned like his father, but activated OFA and produced an aura similar to All Might himself. "Come on. If you want these points, then you'll have to go through me to get them," he yelled as his aura intensified massively. Some of the heroes in the stands who have met All Might felt the sheer pressure he was producing, and it immediately reminded them of All Might. So they were right along with the mysterious informant. He might actually be All Might's successor, thought Hawks, as he stared at Izuku. Turning, he started to walk away down the halls. "Let's see if you can actually prove to the world you are his successor. The world needs a new beacon." Izuku couldn't stop the smurf from forming on his face as he saw small bits of fear on everyone's faces from him, not showing any fear from the glares he was getting. "Good job, young Aizawa. Now you must continue to show the world just how powerful you are and that you will take up all of our mantles to protect everyone," said All Might. "Don't worry, I will, and I'll make each one of you proud," thought Izuku as he looked over towards Rumi and Ryuko, who ran up to him to stand next to him. "Izuku, we are obviously going to be on your team," said Rumi with a smile on her face. Ryuko nodded her head with a fanged smile. "Thank you. Now we need one more person to complete our T. Found him." He then marched off with both girls following him. Tokoyami was minding his own business with his eyes closed when he heard footsteps right in front of him. Opening his eyes, he saw Izuku, Rumi, and Ryuko standing before him with large smiles on their faces. "I assume you have come to me to ask me to join you fellow darkness dwellers," said Tokoyami. "Yes, I did. You will be perfect for our team for what I have planned." Tokoyami nodded his head and had a light smile on his face. "Very well, Aizawa. I'll join you. Just call me Izuku. Makes it easier." "Very well. So, Izuku, what's the plan?" asked Ryuko. "Quite simple. Tokoyami will be in the front and shall use Dark Shadow to harass or stop people while snagging headbands. Rumi, you'll be on my back left and kick anything that gets near, while also helping us get airborne. Ryuko, view this as training to get better at your Hall transformation. It will help you become a better hero that way, and if things get desperate, turn into a dragon and destroy everything," said Izuku. "Now for the rest of the plan. Our goal will be to stay away from everyone else for as long as possible, but eventually they will attack us, with it most likely being Bakugo or Todoroki's team." They all nodded. This was a solid strategy. "Wait, what about you, Izuku? I know you're the rider, but what else will you be doing?" said Rumi. "I'll be pushing everyone back with my quirk. If anyone gets past me, then I want you three to take out anyone who gets past me," said Izuku. "That is indeed a good strategy, but what will we do if we get surrounded? With us having a large target on our backs, everyone will most likely target us," said Tokoyami. "I'd say Izuku uses his ability to fly and pull us up, while Rumi uses her leg strength along with me to push us all up into the sky so we can avoid anyone that might get us," said Ryuko. "I like that idea. Okay, everyone, now that we have a plan, all we got to do is survive 15 minutes and not get our points stolen from us," said Izuku. They all nodded in agreement with smiles on their faces. "Ready, everyone?" yelled Present Mike with a large smile on his face as he heard the cheers of the crowd. "Then begin." Instantly, chaos ensued as almost every team charged at Izuku's team, trying to get the 1,000,000 points from him. Black Whip coated Izuku's arms, and he pulled them into AX before he whipped them out as hard as he could Black Slash. The wisps were as thick as pythons, and they slashed through the ground with 27%. They shattered the ground and sent a massive shockwave and lots of debris towards 7 different teams that were racing towards him. This sheer level of destruction scared off all but 2 teams. These 2 teams were Bakugo's and Todoroki's, who were determined to get him. "Rumi, Ryuko now," said Izuku as he activated Float, and all 4 of them shot off in the air, as Izuku wrapped them all up with Black Whip so they didn't fall. Flying off into the sky at a very fast pace startled both enemy teams, but Bakugo gritted his teeth in rage and released a massive explosion, hitting his team, not that he cared, and went flying after him. "DKU!" Izuku looked down at him and narrowed his eyes. He then raised his arm and did a Delaware smash finger F at him. Seeing the attack coming, Bakugo shot an explosion to dodge it, but he got hit hard by another smash, which sent him rocketing towards the ground, and it was only thanks to his quick reaction time that he was able to save himself and land back on his team. He growled, staring up at the sky where Izuku and his team was. Before he could try to attack him again, he felt something and noticed that his headband is gone. Looking around, he saw another team running away from him. "Sorry, General Studies student, but only us Hero Course students shall make it to the next event," said Monoma with a grin. Multiple veins appeared on Bakugo's forehead, and he gritted his teeth in rage. "You 1A extras move, so I can kill these worthless dash. Bro, you do dash. Shut the up and move. I'm not gonna let that. 1-up me, nor DKU." Snapped Bakugo, shutting Kirishima up. Mina and Siro both glared at him. If they didn't want to make it to the next event, they'd just forfeit to spite him and ruin his chances of getting into 1A. With Izuku's team, they flew a ways before they landed on the ground, but before they could move, ice shot out and surrounded them. Turning his head, he saw Todoroki with his team racing towards him. "Get ready. He's not going to stop attacking us," said Izuku as Black Whip wrapped around his arms and tendrils formed hands as he got ready to fight Todoroki. Todoroki shot another wave of ice at them. Izuku sent a Detroit smash at him, which startled him given how fast he was able to send an attack at them. Thinking quickly, he created an ice slide and diverted his team to the side to dodge the attack, but left them open when Dark Shadow loomed over them and tried to punch them. "No, you don't." Momo quickly created a shield which blocked the strike, but it almost shattered the shield from the force of the punch. Denki saw this and sent a bolt of electricity, but Izuku shot out Black Whip, which blocked the electricity and absorbed it. "Sorry, Popsicle, but you ain't beating us." Rumi kicked her leg up at Ida, kicking him away, and broke the formation with Denki and Momo being the only ones now holding him, with Momo struggling given his weight. Dark Shadow then moved and drove his fist into Denki's stomach, making him puke out his breakfast and fall to the ground. Momo fell, and before Todoroki hit the ground, he built a small tower of ice, saving him. But now he had to wait for his teammates to get back up. "Thanks for the headband, Todoroki," said Izuku, showing that he had the headband on his tendrils. He pulled them back and placed the headband around his neck. Then his team began to move again, leaving them behind. Gritting his teeth, he looked at Momo, who was rolling her shoulder in pain, while Ida and Denki tried to stand up. "Diamin Uizawa," he said as his left side let out a small puff of flames, before he quickly snuffed the flames. Hawks was leaning against the railing watching everything take place, and he had a small smile on his face watching Izuku and his 3 teammates absolutely dismantle every team that went against him. "You're really living up to your declaration. Now, let's see what else you can do," he said with a small smile before he felt his phone go off. Sighing in annoyance, he took it out and answered yes. "Have you made contact with him yet?" said an emotionless female voice. "No, I haven't. They're in the middle of the second event, and I'm now watching him throw a single punch and destroy the team from Class 1B," said Hawks. "Make sure you're the one he turns under. We need him to work for us, given he is All Might's successor. We need to figure out how his quirk works, and if our theory and hints from our source is accurate, then we will have him transfer the quirk to someone more suitable," said the president of the Hero Association. "That seems far-fetched," said Hawks. "How could a quirk be transferred to someone else?" Let me answer that with another question. How come Paragon and All Might both have extremely destructive quirks that with a single punch could level a building or possibly a city? Plus, we also found old records of two more heroes with destructive strength, with one of them being able to produce smoke, and the last one could produce black tendrils like Aizawa seems to be able to do. Hawks narrowed his eyes at that, but he couldn't deny that he saw this kid throw punches that destroyed zero-pointers, then send out black tendrils to attack, or restrain people, or even to use them to move around. He even saw the kid floating and flying around. Like I said, Hawks, send him an offer to turn under you. We'll make sure that yours is one of the few that gets through, number 2 hero. The phone then went silent, leaving Hawks to his own thoughts as he scowled in anger and annoyance at this. He may work for the association, but he doesn't want to clip some kid's wings before he could even begin to fly. Izuku Aizawa, if you do and turn under, I won't let you become one of the association's dogs, he said to himself as he continued to watch the second event. Ryuko transformed her right arm into its dragon form and blocked a strike from Tsu. Before the girl could retract her tongue, Ryuko grabbed it tightly. Sorry, Tsu, but only Izuku can do that. And Rumi, if she wished, she said while whispering the last part, with a smirk before she tugged her hard and made her team fall to the ground and get disqualified. Team ASUI is down. Only Team Aizawa, Todoroki, Bakugo, Shinso, Monoma, Kendo, and Tetsu remain on the field. And you all only have 60 seconds left. Instantly, everyone glared at Izuku's team. But before they could continue, a huge explosion ripped through one area, and they saw Monoma going flying before he smashed into the ground without a headband. Team Monoma is down. Izuku turned his eyes and saw Kendo and Todoroki racing towards him. But his eyes saw that with Todoroki's team, Ida's legs' exhaust had small flames coming out of them, and his danger sense was warning him of something. Recipero burst. Thinking quickly, Izuku shot out a massive cloud of thick purplish smoke while yelling at his team to fall back. Danger sense went off again, and he saw a hand coming from the other direction at him. He quickly grabbed the wrist to stop it, but then a huge hand came towards him. Rumi saw it and planted her foot into the ground while using her other one and stopped it in its tracks. Kendo was shocked that Rumi was able to stop her hand with just using her leg, like it was nothing. This is my win, said Todoroki, moving in while sending a wave of ice at Ryuko, caking her legs in ice and making her body heat drop rapidly. His hand then went for Izuku's headbands, while Momo kept dark shadow off of him. Black Whip Blast, said Izuku as Black Whip coated around his body before it shot out into hundreds of small tendrils that began to trash in every direction. Todoroki's team was beaten black and blue, with Todoroki having to throw a massive amount of ice at Izuku to try and stop the attack and save his team, along with safeguarding the few points they had and acquired from defeating other teams. Kendo wasn't as lucky since both her hands were occupied. Her whole team got destroyed and sent to the ground, while losing her points. Izuku pulled back the tendrils and began to breathe in exhaustion. That attack takes a lot out of him, and it's more of a last-ditch attack he created if he was ever in a situation like this and surrounded on all sides. 20 seconds. Come on, guys, let's go, said Izuku. Right? They all yelled as they began to move, but at a slower speed, given Ryuko was freezing because of the ice and was slowing them down given her cold-blooded body. Once they exited the smoke, they saw Todoroki's team in the distance, stranded since Ida's legs were spent on that last-ditch attack. DKU! Whipping his head over, he saw Bakugo charging at him with explosions and his team racing after him as fast as they could. Rumi, cover your ears as best as you can. Izuku yelled as he reared his fist back, with green and white lightning arching around him. Rumi flopped her ears down to try and block out as much noise as possible, but she could only do so much since she needed to help hold Izuku. Bakugo changed the way he was moving and began to spin as he got ready to attack. Howitzer! Texas! Time's up! Izuku's cut off his quirk, and Bakugo launched her explosion into the sky before he landed and slid a small distance given his momentum. Here are the teams that won the second event. In first place is Team Aizawa, with them being able to keep the 1 million point headband. In second place was Team Bakugo, who managed to get their points back. In third place, we have Team Shinso, and finally in last place we have Team Todoroki. Everyone began to cheer hearing that, and Izuku saw Ojiro raise his hand to say something. But before he heard him say anything, Ryuko grabbed his hand. Izuku, I need you to help warm you up, said Ryuko as she kept shivering from the cold. Izuku nodded his head and without a care in the world, picked her up bridal style and walked off to the tunnel to find a more private spot so he could hold her and help warm up her body faster. Rumi immediately followed behind them to help warm Ryuko up, since she knew if they didn't do it soon, she'll enter a form of hibernation. All right, everyone now, that's taken care of. We shall give everyone here an hour-long break to stretch, eat, and for us to prepare the field, said Present Mike. As that is happening, we shall be having interviews with the staff and heroes here to help pass the time for the viewers at him and here until the third and final event starts. 15 minutes later, Izuku, Rumi, and Ryuko finally entered the cafeteria to get some food. For Ryuko, she finally got her body warm enough. She wasn't in any danger, but she did wear both Izuku's and Rumi's jacket to help warm her up as they walked. Man, I'm starving, said Rumi as they waited in line for the food, while her ears were flopped down in annoyance. Haha, don't worry, we're about to eat, Rumi, and I'm sure Lunch Rush has some carrots in here for you, said Izuku. Rumi's ears immediately stood up, and her foot began to thump on the ground. He was about to continue talking when Ryuko hugged him again, trying to snuggle up to him to get more warmth. You sure are cuddly in public, Izuku joked. I'm cold. You're warm, and I love you. Besides, I don't care if they stare at us. You belong to me and Rumi, and we belong to you, she said. Izuku let out another chuckle before they walked forward and finally grabbed the trays of food. Rumi got a mostly vegetable meal with lots of carrots, but she did have a big piece of steak given she needed the protein to fight. Ryuko's meal was the exact opposite and was almost entirely meat. For Izuku, he went for a double portion of katsudon. It took them another minute of waiting before they each got their own food and were now sitting down at a table with Ochako, Mina, Toru, Momo, Kirishima, Tokoimi, and Kyoka. So who do you think will be in the first match? Said Toru as she munched on her sandwich. Who's to say? If I remember correctly, I believe they randomize it and don't tell everyone until after the break, said Izuku. You are correct. That is how they do it, said Momo as she munched on her quadruple portion meal. Wow. And I thought Izuku and Ryuko could eat a lot of food, said Rumi. It's because of my quirk. I need more lipids for it to work. So I have to eat a massive amount of food, said Momo, embarrassed. Huh. Have you ever tried to eat more dense meals to see if that works better? Or maybe meals that are lighter but have lots of nutrients, said Izuku. I've tried the latter and it doesn't work that well, but the former I haven't tried. I'll try it after the festival so I can test it safely, said Momo with a smile. Thank you for the idea, Aizawa. He no problem. And like I said, call me Izuku. It's much easier for everyone and I don't care too much. Hey bro, what about me? What do you think I can do? Said Kirishima. I'd say have someone wail on you for as long as possible to build up your defense. Also work on how long you can keep your body hardened to allow yourself long drawn-out fights, said Izuku. Sweet, thanks bro. Me next, said Mina with a large smile. For your quirk, I'd say just shoot more acid and try to train your body to produce it everywhere, so you have an attack similar to the one I used in the smoke cloud, said Izuku. That was quite terrifying, said Momo. Sorry about that, Yairozu, said Izuku. It's all right. We were enemies during it. So you had to, she said. It's nice to see all of us getting along, even though we were all enemies at one point, said Ochako with a smile. Well, we are all friends, Uraraka, said Izuku with a smile. They continued to talk and eat for a while, and Izuku was almost done with his meal when Todoroki began to walk towards him. But before he could get closer, someone beat him to Izuku. Hey kid, do you have a second? Said a voice Izuku found faintly familiar. Turning around, his eyes went wide as he saw the number 2 hero of Japan standing in front of him with a smile on his face. Why you mean me? Said Izuku in shock and trying not to show his fanboy side, which made Rumi and Ryuko snort since they knew how embarrassed he gets when he does. Yes, I do. I'd just like to talk to you for a minute or two, if you don't mind, said Hawks with a smile. Sure, he said Izuku as he stood up and kind of towered over him given the height difference between them. Good, then follow me, and don't worry everyone, he'll be back in 5 minutes max, said Hawks with a friendly smile as him and Izuku walked away. Watching them leave made everyone kind of curious what the number 2 hero in Japan wanted to talk to Izuku about. Mr. Hawks, what did you want to talk about? Said Izuku. Ha ha ha, just Hawks is fine. Mr. makes me feel old, he said with a smile, and I wanted to extend to you an invite to intern under me. Izuku's eyes widened like saucers hearing that wait, you want me to? Yes, I do. You're showing great potential, and I'd like to be one of the people who helped you on your way to the top, but this, of course, is 100% your decision. If you don't, I won't hold it against you, said Hawks. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say, besides one last thing. What's that? Hawks' face suddenly became cold and emotionless. Don't join the association. This left Izuku confused until he remembered a while back when a member invited him to join. Anyways, that's all. Keep showing the world just how strong you are, said Hawks as he started to walk away. Wait 1 second, Hawks, said Izuku suddenly. Turning around, he saw the teen holding a notebook and pen. Could you please sign this for me? Letting out a small chuckle, he nodded his head and signed it on his page, while admiring how much detail went into his own quirk that this kid knew. It was honestly terrifying and showed another reason why he can't let the association sink its claws into him. Hawks then walked away while waving a goodbye, and Izuku couldn't wipe the grin off his face. The number 2 hero offered him to intern under him, and he then got his autograph. Today was an amazing day for Izuku. Izuku was sitting with Rumi and Ryuko. They were all waiting for the first round to be announced to see who will be fighting in the first round. Man, they called us all out here, and we've just been sitting here for 10 minutes now, said Rumi, annoyed. I do have to agree, it's a bit annoying, said Izuku. Before anyone else could speak, President Mike began. Hello, everyone. Let's get this party started with the very first fight. It shall be Katsuki Bakugo versus Ochako Uraraka. Also, just so all of you know, instead of going down the list like normal, we will be bouncing around to keep the matches interesting. Izuku's eyes immediately narrowed at hearing that. He knew how Katsuki acted, and his head started to hurt as suppressed memories slowly started to surface again of stuff he's long forgotten. I need to talk to Uraraka before the fight starts, so she knows about how hostile he is, said Izuku, standing up as he walked off, heading towards where he last saw her. "K," said Rumi as she continued to wait for the matches to start and began to flop her ears around in sheer boredom. With Izuku, he was walking down the halls, looking for Ochako, when he finally saw her and began to head toward her faster. "Uraraka," he said, getting her attention. "Oh, Izuku, what's up?" she asked, looking at him curiously since she was getting ready for a fight. "Nothing much. I just wanted to warn you about Bakugo," he said. "Warn me about what?" "I saw that he's a bit aggressive," said Ochako. "He's more than that. He won't hesitate hurt you seriously and make it look like an accident. He's nothing more than a bully, and if he could get away with it, he will hurt you badly. So please be careful," said Izuku, not wanting to see his friend get hurt. Ochako blushed a little, but pushed her feelings down. He was with Rumi. "And Ryuko." "Thank you, Izuku. I really appreciate the warning." He nodded his head, then leaned in next to her ear and whispered, "He has very good fighting instincts. He can react on pure instinct." Izuku then walked away after patting her shoulder to show his support, before he left, heading back to the stands where his girlfriends were. Ochako arrived on the stage with tens of thousands of people watching it. It made her very nervous, until she spotted 2 familiar figures up in the stands near the front. They were her parents, who were cheering happily at seeing her get this far. Ochako wiped a tear of happiness from her eye, before she hardened her resolve and looked at her opponent, who was stomping his way toward her. He had a massive scowl on his face and kept letting off tiny explosions from his hands. "Are both fighters ready?" asked Midnight, looking at them both, but her eyes lingered longer on Bakugo, not liking the look in his eye. "Just get this stupid match started, you harlot," he snarled. Narrowing her eyes, she kept a professional face, but had to beat down her anger before she cracked her WHB begin. Before Ochako could even move, Bakugo released a massive explosion and propelled himself forward and placed his hand on her stomach. Died. An even bigger explosion went off and blew her stomach up, sending her flying across the ring, and was about to smash into the wall head first, but someone stopped her. Izuku dashed forward and caught her, using his body to shield her from smashing head first into the wall, but the force of trying to stop her sent them through the wall. "Urark, are you okay?" he said, looking down at her, before he quickly whipped his head to the side, given her shirt was destroyed and basically everything was exposed. "Oh wow," she said, holding her stomach and lower chest in pain as those areas had burns on them given the massive attack that Bakugo used. Here," he said, a bit embarrassed as he wrapped his jacket around her to cover her up before he picked her up and began to take her to the infirmary. Back in the arena, Bakugo began to walk back to the stands, not caring that he was getting booed at for that attack. He just screamed at them, telling them that she was too weak. With Izuku, he put a very, very red Ochako on the medical bed as Recovery Girl got to work on helping her heal. Ochako couldn't even look at Izuku anymore. He saw everything. For Izuku, he left after hearing that she will be okay, but will most likely be in here for an hour or two. He began to walk back to the stand when he saw that Mina and Aoyama were currently fighting. "Diaminu Bakugo," he growled out as he clenched his fists in anger, and black whips started to course around his body, responding to his anger, along with his lightning. "Kick him in the..." with 30%, said all the previous users at once. Gladly, he thought before walking to his seat where he saw Mina defeat Aoyama. Mina Ishido is the winner. Now for the next match. Rumi Usajiyama versus Ejiro Kirishima. "Finally," yelled Rumi, standing up and was about to jump the rail, but she spotted Izuku first and walked over to him. "Arumi, good L dash." He was cut off when she grabbed the collar of his shirt and pulled him down to her level as she stood up on her elongated toes and kissed him on the lips before she walked to the arena. "Izuku, is Ochako okay?" asked Ryuko, with the others looking at him with worried expressions. Recovery Girl said she's okay, and if it wasn't for me using my body as a shield, she most likely would have had her neck broken from that explosion, sending her at the wall, said Izuku, while clenching his fists in rage. He was going to make Bakugo pay. His eyes caught in the distance, a certain ash blonde color that belonged to said man, and his eyes glowed with power as he glared at Bakugo. Heck yeah, this fight is going to be so manly. And I mean no offense when I say this, but I was kind of hoping to fight Izuku, bro, said Kirishima with a smile on his face. Rumi let out a small chuckle. "No worries. I'm aware you two are friends and like to spar, but this isn't a spar, and I'm not Izuku. So let's get this party started," SHS said with a feral grin. Both of them stared at each other and waited for the crack of the WHB, where Kirishima hardened his arms and charged, while Rumi shot forward and did a spinning kick straight to his arm. The blow sent him back, but he managed to stop himself by smashing his arm into the ground, acting like an anchor. Once he came to a stop, he looked up and saw Rumi coming down with an axe kick, and he brought both arms up to block this strike. Rumi's kick cracked the ground under him and made his bones groan in pain from the strain of stopping that blow. But he pushed through and tried to punch her, but she jumped back. He's a tank, can take lots of damage and dish it out, but doesn't have great maneuverability or speed. I can use that to my advantage, thought Rumi as the ground under her shattered as she shot forward. Kirishima ducked under another kick and tried to punch her, but Rumi used her arms and grabbed his arm before she twisted her body and kicked the side of his head with her heel, which would have knocked him out if he didn't harden his head at the last second. "CRP," he said, holding his head in pain. If he didn't harden his head, he would he out. Rumi moved back in and did a feint before dropping to the ground and kicking his feet from under him. She then dropped her elbow on his stomach, but he hardened it to tank the blow. Gritting her teeth from the pain, she jumped back to gain distance and to shake the pain away from her arm. "Well, that one hurt," she said, looking at Kirishima, where on the outside he looked fine, but internally it was a different story since her blows hurt his innards that couldn't harden. Taking a deep breath, she calmed for excitement down. Gran Torino and Izuku's dad always told her her love for battle could cloud her judgment and give her opponent the advantage, which was something that Izuku exploited about her a lot during spars. Looking over Kirishima, she began to form a plan for a couple seconds before one finally popped up that could work. Kirishima watched as she suddenly shot forward towards him, and it looked like she was going for his head, but the last second she kicked her leg to change her trajectory and then kicked the side of his knee. Ugh! He gripped his knee in pain, but she moved in to elbow strike him, so he hardened his head and brought his arm up, but once again she used her flexibility and speed to move and kick him in the same knee again. Kirishima fully fell to a single knee, and his right leg hurt too much to move. Given the blows, she dealt the joint with her kicks. Rumi, seeing her chance, tried to axe kick him again, but Kirishima moved faster than she expected and grabbed her leg, stopping it. "I'm not going down that easily," he said, tightening his grip. Rumi grinned before speaking. "I think you forgot just how much torque I have in my legs and hips. I could literally tear you in half. But hey, you're the one who wants to challenge it," she said. Jumping and spinning, she slammed her other leg against his neck before bringing his body down and grabbing hold of his arm and beginning to apply pressure. Kirishima gritted his teeth in pain, feeling his arm and neck getting pulled painfully given the sheer level of strength her legs have. It didn't take him long before he began to see stars, and his vision began to get blurry from lack of air getting to his lungs and brain. After a couple more seconds, he finally tapped out as his vision was going black. Winner of the third round, Rumi Usajiyama, yelled Present Mike. Rumi got up and picked Kirishima up to his feet before she patted his shoulder. "You did good, redhead. Now, keep training and make sure you overcome your weaknesses or you don't deserve to be a hero," she said, walking away. "Cough, cough, right?" he said before coughing a couple more times as he walked away. Walking up to her seat, she sat down happily next to Izuku and immediately kissed his cheek before she leaned against him with a happy smile on her face. "You did amazing, Rumi," said Izuku with a smile as he kissed her forehead and gave her a side hug. Ryuko puffed her cheeks, but before she could say anything, Izuku pulled her into a hug too and kissed her forehead, making her smile as she snuggled against him. A couple more matches went by in the last half hour. Tokoyami versus Yaoyorozu with Tokoyami winning. Ida versus Hatsum with Ito winning. Todoroki versus Shiro with Todoroki winning. And lastly, Ryuko versus Kaminari. The last one was as depressing as the Todoroki fight. Ryuko just flat out tanked an electric shock and grew a tail before slapping him out of the ring. Safe to say she was angry at her match being slow and was hoping for a more fun match. Now came for the final match for the first rounds. The final match will be Izuku Aizawa versus Shinso Hitoshi, yelled Present Mike. Izuku jumped out of the stand and began to walk towards the ring as he saw from the general studies stand a purple-haired student walking towards the ring too. Both of them soon stood in front of each other, and Izuku swore Shinso reminded him a bit about himself, sometimes with sleep deprivation, and his father whenever his mom doesn't drag him to bed. Izuku shuddered from memory of the last time both him and his dad tried to sleep in sleeping bags. The glares that Emi, Rumi, and Ryuko gave them both were terrifying. "Are both fighters ready?" yelled Midnight. Both of them nodded, but Shinso kept his hands in his pockets and looked calm. "Then fight. It must be nice to have such a powerful quirk and not have to struggle every day with it," said Shinso. "What do you dash?" Izuku stopped as his eyes went blank, and he slouched forward. "Checkmate. Now walk about of the ring," he said with a grin. Izuku's body obeyed, and he turned around and began to walk away. "Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's going on with Aizawa? He's just walking towards the edge of the ring," yelled out Present Mike. "Izuku, quit messing around and kick his butt," yelled Rumi, trying to get his attention. "Izuku, stop walking away and fight," yelled Ryuko. Both their voices went of deaf ears as he continued to walk towards the edge. "What the hell is going on? I need to move, but my body won't respond," he yelled internally as he began to think of a way out of this. The other user sat around and watched him to see what will happen. Nana, the first along with All Might, wanted to help him, but the others convinced them to wait and see if Izuku can pull his way out of this. "Let's see, my body won't move, no matter how much I try. What'll dash? My quirk. Let's see if that responds, he thought. Outside his body, tiny wisps of lightning started to arc around him, but they didn't do anything. But seeing that his quirk did work, that meant Izuku could at least stop himself from walking. Black Whip came to life and anchored itself into the ground, stopping his body 3 feet from the edge of the ring. What the? Hey, leave the ring, Shinso said slightly louder, trying to make him leave. Izuku's body tried to move, but Black Whip prevented him from moving at all as it kept him anchored. Black Whip then started to coat one of his fingers as lightning arched around it the most. Delaware smash, he thought. A single finger F went off and Izuku used 60%, and the results were absolutely terrifying for the audience watching. The wind blast blew everyone in first 2 levels of stadium back against their seats from the sheer wind pressure. While with Shinso, he also flew out of the ring, but managed to dig his hands into a tile that was bent enough for him to grab the edge of it. Once the wind died down, Izuku was standing still, and his head slowly turned towards Shinso, and he did something terrifying, but made his dad very proud. Izuku's long white and black hair stood up as his eyes glowed green and white with electricity. In a way, Izuku looked a lot like his dad minus the electricity right now. Hey, SD-. Izuku disappeared and appeared before him and punched him in the stomach with a 6% smash, which sent Shinso flying out of the ring and smashing into the ground. Note of advice: make your body stronger and don't only rely on your quirk, or else you'll lose. For even the strongest heroes have to train in other areas to fight, said Izuku, as he remembered that All Might said that was part of the reason why he lost. He put too many eggs in one basket, which costed him his life. And the winner is Izuku Aizawa, with an amazing turnaround. Not only that, everyone, but he's once again showed US all his amazing strength. Izuku chuckled before he turned and walked away, heading back to the stands, but his eyes caught Bakugo's. They both stared at each other with hatred before Izuku turned away and jumped to his seat where his girlfriends hugged him happily that he won. All right, everyone, now that the first rounds are over, we can move on to the second rounds, which will bring us to the semi-finals. First up is Katsuki Bakugo versus Rumi Usajiyama. In his seat, Bakugo grinned darkly. It was time to show everyone again, including Deku, that he's still better than everyone, and what better way than beating his girlfriend. With Class 1A, they all heard the sound of metal groaning in pain as Izuku crushed the armrest with his sheer grip strength. Rumi, I know you don't need it, but please be careful, he said, not taking his eyes off the blonde as they swam with rage. Don't worry, I'll win this, Izu. After all, we got to fight in the finals, she said happily before kissing him and walking off. Izuku couldn't help but smile a bit. Her and Ryuko always knew how to make him feel better, but that didn't mean he still wasn't worried because he saw what Bakugo did to Ochako. He dreaded to know what he'll do to Rumi. Rumi and Katsuki walked out onto the field, and they were both glaring at each other with anger and hatred for different reasons. Rumi, given what he did to Izuku and the fact that all his mental problems, along with a lot of the scars he had, were all from this one person. Katsuki, since she was friends with Deku, and worse, this was dating him. Deku was meant to be alone in this world and die alone, not find happiness. Both of them finally arrived in front of each other and glared hard enough that it would have killed a normal person. Midnight looked at them both and was a little bit nervous, given she has a very good idea what Rumi wants to do to him. While Bakugo, she had no idea. Are both fighters ready? She asked, looking at them, both with a little bit of hesitation. Neither of them said anything, just glared more harshly. Then begin. Katsuki was the first to move by releasing a massive explosion, but Rumi moved faster than expected and jumped off to the side before she kicked the air with enough force to stop her momentum. She then kicked again and flew at him. Seeing her coming, he spun and shot her explosion, but Rumi kicked the air below her and flew over the explosion and got ready to try and axe kick him, but he blasted himself backwards, dodging the kick. Skidding back, he blasted the ground to create a smokescreen before he shot forward, hoping to capitalize on the smokescreen. He was halfway through it when he saw something coming at him, so he quickly turned and released a massive explosion at what he believed was Rumi. but it ended up being one of the tiles from the ring. Point blank, the smoke immediately dissipated, revealing everything around him. But before he could assess the situation, Rumi finally managed to sneak in and land a strike. The kick hit him hard and made him go flying as he held his side in pain from such a painful blow. It almost broke his ribs, but instead it only cracked them. As he reeled back from the pain, he looked up at Rumi and got in a looser stance. Rumi's eyes narrowed at seeing that and got a little more on guard. Katsuki then moved in, and once he saw her shoot her left leg to kick him, he made his move. Flash grenade. A massive flash of light covered the area and temporarily blinded Rumi, allowing him to punch her stomach hard while releasing an explosion. It sent her away, and she tried to stand up and clear her vision, but she got met with another explosion that hit her face and upper body, hurting her more and ended up ripping her clothes a bit, but not enough to reveal anything. In the stands at Izuku's chair, the armrests snapped from his grip on them. Ryuko immediately reached over and gently grabbed his hand to calm him down, which did thankfully work a bit. Back with the fight, Rumi finally managed to regain her sight and pretended not to see, letting Bakugo get close before she kicked his forearm, breaking it. "You!" An explosion went off and sent him back along with blasting Rumi back from the massive blast. She then looked up and saw Bakugo a distance away holding his broken forearm. "Let's dance head," she said, moving in. Bakugo started to blast lots of explosions with his one arm, but Rumi used the smokescreen once again to move past it all and sneak to his side before she moved and ended. He grinned darkly and swung his arm, releasing an even bigger explosion. But Rumi managed to move her body enough to dodge most of it, but it still clipped the side of her head and blasted off half of her right ear. But then her leg snapped forward and made it mark hitting him hard, breaking his other arm and sending him flying out of the ring. "Rumi Usajiyama is the winner," yelled Present Mike with a large smile. The crowd went wild before the smoke around her cleared enough to reveal that she was pretty injured and she was missing hold of her right ear. The arm rest under Izuku's arm finally shattered at seeing that, and his eyes were firmly glued on Katsuki's unconscious body laying on the grass. "So how is she?" asked Izuku, with Ryuko right next to her looking just as worried. "She'll be okay. I used my quirk on her and healed most of the damage. She just now needs to rest, but sadly for her ear, I couldn't reattach that given the damage," said Recovery Girl. Izuku looked down and clenched his fists before he looked back at her. "Can we see her, please?" he asked. "Please," said Ryuko. Sighing, she nodded her head and opened the door for them, which they didn't even hesitate to enter to see her. Rumi was sound asleep and had a couple bandages on her body along with some on her clipped right ear. Ryuko moved faster than Izuku and immediately raced over to her, grabbing her hand. "Rumi," she said, sadly looking at her. Izuku walked forward slowly and sat down on her other side and grabbed her hand while looking at her ear. A new wave of anger washed over him, making him wish he was the one who beat him so he could make sure Bakugo suffered for everything he did. In NNGH, Rumi slowly opened her eyes and was immediately greeted by the sight of both Izuku and Ryuko looking at her. "Ugh. My head hurts." "I'm glad you seem okay," said Izuku with a small smile, since Rumi didn't yet realize what happened. "So, how bad did I kick his butt?" she asked. "Pretty bad. Though I'm sure Izuku would say you should have been meaner," said Ryuko. "You're right, I would have. That deserved what he got and worse," he said with a small smile. "Bad Izuku," said Ryuko while half-heartedly slapping his hand with a small smile. Izuku decided to mess with her and looked at her with a stuck smirk. "You want to talk when you and Rumi asked me to choke you both the other night." Ryuko blushed and looked away while Rumi giggled. "And right we did," she said with her ears perking up, but she immediately noticed that something was wrong with the right one. Her hand moved up and trailed over her right ear and felt fur, before it felt bandages, and then she noticed that half of it was gone. "What happened to my ear?" she asked. "During your last attack, Bakugo moved in and did a last-minute explosion that you dodged, but it clipped your ear and hair along with your cheek," he said. Ryuko walked over and grabbed a handheld mirror before showing Rumi. Her upper right ear was missing, and she got hair cut down to a little above her shoulder. Then on her face was some light red coloration, showing the healing burns and cuts from the explosion. "Oh," she said with a bit of sadness as her ears drooped a bit. Izuku immediately saw this and decided to take her mind off that. He moved forward and gently cupped her chin before kissing her with so much love that it made her toes curl. After a couple seconds, he pulled back and smiled. "You're still as appealing as ever," he said. "Indeed, you really are, Rumi. You're just as appealing as you were before," said Ryuko as she gently pecked her cheek. "Thank you. You too," she said, feeling better. "And Tokoyami has beaten Ishido." Next match is Ryuko Tatsuma versus Tenya Ida. Both Izuku and Rumi looked at her with blank expressions. "Kick his butt." "With pleasure," she said before looking at Izuku. "You owe me a miss still." He playfully rolled his eyes. "I don't know. Maybe I want to just give my chocolate bunny more kisses," he said. Her eyes immediately narrowed, and he heard a subtle growl from her. Izuku chuckled and stood up before walking up to her, then gently cupping her chin, lifting it up and kissing her with just as much love and passion as he did to Rumi. A couple seconds later, he pulled back and saw Ryuko's eyes gained a glint, so he pushed harder and leaned down again, just hovering his lips over hers, making her whine at not getting another kiss. "Win this match, my golden treasure, and I'll give you something special tonight." He then leaned in her ear and whispered, "I'll show you how well I can tame you." He then nipped her ear. Ryuko let out at hearing that, and she was going to try and bite him, but he stood up with a certain smile that made her dragon instincts roar more at being denied what she wants. "Sorry, Ryuko, but you have to win this match, or you won't get that," he said. Her eyes widened, and she immediately stood up, walking away, heading to the ring to end this match as fast as possible. Her instincts wouldn't accept anything less. "You know she's going to destroy him and demand." Afterwards, said Rumi. "Ha ha, oh I know," he said with a small smile before looking at her. "Are you feeling okay?" "My head and arm hurts. Besides that, I'm fine. Hopefully after some more rest, then I can fight you since you got to fight." "Todoroki, then Ryuko," said Rumi. "If you feel good enough, then I look forward to fighting you. If not, then don't worry, I will understand, and I'll ask Dad to set up a competition between us," he said. A tiny smile appeared on her face at that. "Thanks, but I do hope I can fight you here." And Ryuko Tatsuma has beaten Tenya Ida with only a simple tail swipe. "If you need me, I'm going to start running," he said before taking off, hoping to hide from his dragon girlfriend. But he didn't even get 5 feet down the hall. "Izuku," said Ryuko with a fanged grin. Rumi then saw said woman dash down the hall at terrifying speeds before the sounds of a tussle, then dragging, and finally a door being slammed shut. "I'm sure he's okay." "Ryuko won't go to Sar." She then stopped as she remembered both of them were still in heat. He'll live. 20 minutes later, Izuku left the student bathroom that Ryuko dragged him in and more or less forced him to her till she was satisfied. Safe to say some of the lockers were bent in. He was now walking down the hall heading to his seat, believing if he heard the announcements right, then they were taking a 30-minute break, given that Ryuko ended up destroying part of the ring and wall, so they had to fix it. As he kept walking, he turned a corner and saw Endeavor standing at the end of the hall with his arms crossed and eyes closed. Izuku ignored his presence and continued walking. While sure, ever since he became the #1 hero, he's become nicer, but he was still a dash. He was about to pass him when Endeavor spoke. "Boy, I wish to talk to you for a moment." "It won't be long," he said, opening his eyes and looking down at the teen who was only a couple inches shorter than given Izuku had his father's height. "Yes," he said, wondering what the #1 would want with him. "I will admit you are very strong and fast, along with able to easily defeat your opponents, but you still lack experience," he said, not beating around the bush. "Okay," Izuku said, fully aware of that. "Because of this, my son will defeat you. For that, I wish you give it your all and make him use his fire to push him to his limits," said Endeavor. "I mean, I was going to give him my all since I'm aware how strong he is, but I'm not going to push him just because you told me to. If I was then, I couldn't call myself a hero in training," said Izuku. "Also, I see how he acts here. He's very quiet, and if anyone mentions fire or his heritage, then he gets pissed." And he said, wondering when Izuku would get to the point. "It's not my business since he's not my friend. Scratch that. He's not anyone's friend in the wild school. So whatever you did turned him into that Endeavor, he said before walking away. Watching Izuku leave made Endeavor let out a small chuckle. It's been a very long time since someone stood up to him and didn't cower, given his intimidating appearance. Now for the last match of these rounds before we move to the semi-finals and finals. Yell present Mike hyping up the crowd. Izuku Aizawa versus Shoto Todoroki. Before they could enter, they heard the sounds of tussling over the mic before Ms. Joke's voice was heard. Kick his butt, Izuku. Mom loves you. Izuku's face went beet red in embarrassment as he sent a glare at the window, where he saw her waving at him happily with a large smile on her face. Out of all the times, Mom, he muttered under his breath before looking up, seeing the cold, expressionless face of Todoroki. Midnight looked at them both and smirked. Are both fighters ready? Izuku got into his fighting stance, while Todoroki raised his right arm, ready to attack. Then fight. Immediately, everything went white as Todoroki launched a massive glacier of ice at Izuku, hoping to end this fight in an instant. But then it all exploded into a million pieces from Izuku's punch. Is that all you got, son of Endeavor? Said Izuku, looking at him, as if he didn't just destroy an entire glacier of ice. His eyes narrowed in anger, and he sent another wave of ice, but like before was instantly destroyed, and Izuku shot forward to attack. Seeing him coming, he created a wall of ice, but then Izuku suddenly appeared on the side of the wall using Black Whip to snap him around the corner and launch him at Todoroki. Trying to create more ice, he was punched hard across the face and felt something crack as he was sent flying and ragdolling across the ring, before coming to a stop. You know, I don't like sticking my nose in other people's businesses. I just prefer to stick with my girlfriends and friend group, and I'd be content with that. But I think with you, I need a more hands-on approach to fix the mess you are, said Izuku, walking calmly towards him. What the hell are you talking about? Said Todoroki before he spat out one of his teeth, much to his anger. You're stupid. You cry about not wanting to use your quirk. Yet here you're using your quirk and looking down on everyone else who's giving it our all, and you just keep half-assing it, Izuku said as he continued to walk towards him. Todoroki glared at him and sent another wave of ice before moving to the side and sending a smaller but faster wave of ice. They were instantly destroyed by Izuku, and he shot forward, using float to fly over him and come down like a meteor. Seeing him come, Todoroki tried to send as much ice as he could, but Izuku shot Black Whip, which hit his shoulder hard, breaking his right arm. Izuku then kicked the air, moving faster before his leg connected to Todoroki's side and cracked 4 ribs and making him smash into the ground. This is what I meant. Now you're useless since your right arm is broken, he said in a harsh tone, walking up to him. Shut your mouth, snarled Todoroki as he was about to send ice with his leg, but Deku stopped him by grabbing his leg and smashing him into the ground. You rely too much on overwhelming power and don't think things through, and whether you like it or not, but your mentality is the same as your father's. Just overwhelming power and end the fight as fast as possible, said Izuku. It may be a good strategy, but what about now? All you can think to do is use the exact same attack over and over again, hoping for different results. Todoroki was then hurled out of the ring and smashed into the ground, groaning in pain. Think about what you really want and what it means to be a hero, Izuku said before walking away and spotting his father in the crowd, giving a nod of approval. The winner is Izuku Aizawa. The crowd was extremely hyped since these were going to be the last 3 fights for the day before the winners were announced, and it was safe to say the excitement was palatable. It was Izuku Aizawa versus Ryuko Tatsuma, Fumikichi Tokoyami versus Rumi Usajiyama. Then the final fight would be between the winner of these matches. Izuku did some last-minute stretches while ignoring the predatory grin coming from Ryuko, since they only had enough time for a quickie and she wanted more. So, Izuku, let's make our match more interesting, she said with a smile that looked innocent, but was anything but that. He looked over at her while tying his hair into a ponytail. Whoever wins gets to be the Diamante one in bed tonight, and believe me, Izuku, I want to be on top and ride you, she said with zero shame, which would make Rumi very, very proud of her. Oh, I don't know, Ryuko. Seem to remember a certain dragon who liked to be dominated by me, he said with a chuckle. Don't mean I don't want to try something new, she said. Fine, we'll do it that way. If I win, I the demon won, and if you win, then you are happy, he said with a light smile. Very, she cooed. Izuku then looked back out at the field as both him and Ryuko waited for Present Mike to call the start of their match, so they can come out and prepare to fight. You know, it's kind of funny, Izuku said, getting Ryuko's attention. Look at how far we've come. We went from 3 kids being bullied and picked on because of our quirks or lack thereof, to now being here in UA and participating in the semifinals to see who's the strongest and wins this fight. I guess you're right. We really have gone through a lot over the years, and I can only think of one thing I'd change about it all, she said before standing next to him and leaning her head against his shoulder. It would be meeting you sooner. Izuku smiled and kissed her forehead before he wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer. In this fight, let's give it our all. We aren't mates. We are opponents fighting to see who's stronger, said Izuku. I can agree to that, and you better not pull your punches since I'm a girl and your girlfriend. If you don't give it your all, then I'll be pissed, she said. Same goes for you. They both then continued to stand together and wait until they finally heard Present Mike call for them. Now it's time for the first match of the semi-finals. Izuku Aizawa and Ryuko Tatsuma. Both of them looked at each other and gave a quick kiss before they both walked out and started to walk towards opposite sides of the fighting arena. Soon they were both standing before one another, and Izuku raised his arms getting ready to fight. Ryuko herself raised her own arms as her nails extended into claws and scales started to cover her arms. Midnight looked at both of them, and with the crack of her WHB, the match started. Izuku used 10% and appeared before Ryuko, who brought her arms up and blocked the kick, but it did make her bones groan a bit and sent her body a couple feet back. She then ran forward herself and tried to make a slash, but Izuku easily dodged the strike and went for a quick jab, but she saw it and grabbed it, while also managing to move her leg fast enough and drove it into his stomach. Reeling back from the blow, Izuku took a step back and whipped his arm out while using Black Whip to grab her arm and then pin it down on the ground. He then spun his body and tried to land a drop kick, but Ryuko used her other arm to block it, then created her tail and swiped it at Izuku. Sensing the danger approaching, Izuku jumped back to gain distance, while also releasing a small cloud of smoke to make it harder for her to see or smell him with limited visibility. He's still hard to believe I'm having to use more and more of my transformation to stand a chance against you, said Ryuko with a smile as she looked around the smoke and smelled deeply to try and find him. Well, in all fairness, your dragon form is your strongest, and I focus more of speed, while landing very heavy blows, said Izuku. True, but you are forgetting one thing. Scales started to cover her throat as she started to transform her head enough that the organ needed to spew fire appeared. A massive wave of flames shot out of her mouth and covered the whole area where all the smoke was, in hopes to cause him to jump into the open so she can attack him. Looking up, she saw him up in the air, and she opened her mouth to spew out more flames. But Izuku shot Black Whip out and clamped her mouth shut. Kicking the air, he came down fast and tried to land an axe kick to her head, but she quickly transformed to her full form and used her massive wings to beat the air and prevent him from landing his attack. Getting blasted back, Izuku kicked the air again and used Black Whip to pull him in. Seeing him coming, Ryuko whipped her head, while also grabbing the tendril and slamming it down to try and prevent him from getting closer, but Izuku did something she wasn't expecting and smashed his arm on the tendril, breaking it. Smash! A powerful kick landed on her and blew her back, but she managed to sink her claws in the ground and stop herself before she swung her tail and whipped him away with the appendage. Getting blown back, Izuku slid against the ground and flipped, landing on his feet, and looked up to see Ryuko charging at him at a decently fast pace. Seeing her coming, Izuku slammed his foot on the ground, creating a fissure on the ground, making her lose some of her balance. This gave him another opportunity to move in and land a kick, but was blocked by her hand. The blow hurt her hand greatly. She knew if she tried that again with the same hand, it might break the bone, since Izuku packs so much force in each punch or kick he lands, and he could put even more in set attacks. Noticing her moment of hesitation, he coated his arm in Black Whip before he shot it out in a lone tendril, like a javelin. This attack made its mark and whipped Ryuko's head to the side from the sheer amount of force behind the attack, and how it was concentrated in a tendril no thicker than a yen coin. Ryuko's brain was shook from that, and she could barely stand, but forced herself to and trained her eyes back on Izuku. So, you do have tricks up your sleeve we don't know about, she said, trying to stay conscious. I knew I was going to have to fight you or Rumi, so had to prepare by making new strategies or attacks you wouldn't expect, said Izuku. Can't fault you for that, she said before her legs gave and she was laying on the ground, with her head still spinning very badly from that attack. Midnight, I yield. I can't see straight. Hearing her yield, Midnight cracked her WHB and announced Izuku as the winner. Ryuko immediately shrunk into her normal form and just stared at the ground, trying to keep her eyes focused on something so she doesn't puke. Given this, she didn't notice Izuku walking up to her and gently picked her up in a princess carry. Izuku, she said, a bit embarrassed and shocked. My golden princess deserves to be carried by her knight to the infirmary, especially after he heard her, Izuku said with a smile. Ryuko couldn't help but blush at that and snuggled her head against his chest as her cords vibrated, making what sounded like happy, growling noises as she enjoyed his warmth. I love you, she said happily, and I love you even more. The vibrating of her cords got even louder. Rumi smiled happily at seeing that match. As much as she didn't like to admit it, she knew that Ryuko wouldn't win, and if she was completely honest with herself, she won't win either. But that sure as hell don't mean she won't try and give it her all in both these fights. She's waited too long for this match, and she was going to win it. She was about to get up when her phone went off, and she looked at the contact and was surprised it was Gran Torino. What do you want, you ancient fossil? Is that any way to treat your elders? I'm the second oldest person you know, said Gran Torino. Who's the oldest? That'd be me. I still remember when me and my servants were creating the universe, said Nezu, popping out of the ceiling. Rumi slowly turned her head and stared at Nezu's soulless black eyes and couldn't tell if he was being serious or with her. I'm not. With you. That's Izuku's job. Mine is just to mess with people and PSS others off, said Nezu as he took a sip of tea, even though he was upside down and gravity should make the liquid fall to the ground. Don't worry about it. Anyways, I must go and get back to my usual shenanigans. Also you, the one on the toilet and reading this. Get a life. Nezu then disappeared back into the ceiling. What the? It just happened, said Rumi. Don't worry about it. I still have nightmares back when I was a kid, and he was more unhinged, said Gran Torino. Anyways, I want you to intern under me. I will worry about it if you don't tell me. Are all of you ready for the next match? Said Midnight loudly, since Present Mike had an emergency bathroom break. The crowd started to cheer loudly. Great. Now it's time for the last match before the finals, and the one that will decide the final fight for the day, yelled Midnight. Now it's for Fumikage Tokoyami versus Rumi Usajiyama. Both students exited the tunnel and started to walk towards each end of the ring before, much like Izuku and Ryuko, they both got into combat stances for this fight. Dark Shadow exited Tokoyami and stood in front of him, ready to fight, while Rumi's feet cracked the ground as she applied more pressure. Looking at them both one last time, Midnight cracked her WHP begin. Rumi shot forward at terrifying speeds and swung her leg out, almost hitting Tokoyami since she passed Dark Shadow, but said creature was able to retract just fast enough to tank the blow. Tokoyami let out a grunt of pain as Dark Shadow smashed into him and sent him flying back. He then looked up and saw her coming in with an axe kick similar to Izuku's, so sent Dark Shadow to block it. Rumi grinned viciously and kicked the air, making her spin, and she landed another kick, but this time it hit its mark and hit Tokoyami himself. Being sent back, he tried to call upon Dark Shadow again, but then a pair of feet wrapped around his leg before Rumi twisted her body and smashed Tokoyami straight into the ground, head first. Rumi immediately stood up and jumped backwards, staring at his body, waiting to see if he was still awake. But after waiting for a minute and him not moving except for the rising and falling of his chest. Midnight called the match. What a quick but amazing fight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now on to the finals. Will Izuku Aizawa come out to the ring? The crowd leaned forward in excitement as they watched said student exit the tunnel and walk towards the ring, locking eyes with Rumi and saw the sheer level of excitement in them. She has been waiting for this fight for a long time. She has trained as hard as she could preparing for it, and now she was ready to finally officially fight Izuku, and not just spar with him. Izuku himself couldn't help but feel excited, the same level of excitement for when he fought against Ryuko. He stopped walking and stared at her and had a small smile on his face. Let's see who's really better at fighting. I couldn't agree more, Izuku, she said with a feral grin. Let's get this fight started. She yelled as the ground under her cracked, and she shot forward, spinning her body to get more force for her kick. Seeing the attack coming, Izuku ducked under it and jumped backwards to gain some distance from her. Seeing this, she shot off again and went for another kick, but Izuku recognized this attack and moved in while lifting his arm and grabbing her thigh to stop her strike. At the same time, he drove his knee right in her gut with 10%. Rumi coughed up saliva and was completely caught off guard. No one has ever moved in on one of her attacks. It's almost like he knew my attack, she thought while catching her breath. Lunar Ring. Using her incredible leg strength, she kicked her leg and spun her body, but Izuku dodged it again and used a quick Ohio smash to negate her attack. After she used that attack, she blasted towards him and did an axe kick, which he blocked and countered with a jab to her stomach. The jab shot her off of him, but he had to quickly duck from her and shooting Black Whip into the ground and using it launch himself back at her to stop any possible attacks. Izuku did a 15% Detroit smash, which Rumi dodged and launched at him. Izuku raised his hands to block the attack, but Rumi changed direction mid-air and kicked him in the head. Izuku stumbled back and was met with Rumi's foot smashing into his face again and launching him across the ring, where he drove his fist into the ground, stopping himself. He slowly stood up and watched as she was rocketing towards him while bouncing off some of the broken concrete. Izuku lifted his leg up with green and black lightning arching around him. Kansas smash! Screamed Izuku as he brought it down on the ground and lifted up a chunk of the arena up, creating a wall. Izuku used this to his advantage and sprung up and surprised Rumi with a Detroit smash to her stomach as she cleared the wall. Rumi was launched up in the air and couldn't help but smile at seeing Izuku give her such a good fight. Shooting at each other again, they both swung out their legs, which collided and shook the bones inside, then from the sheer force of the kick. Kagaya Crescent, Rumi said, twisting her hips to get as much torque as she could to kick him. Izuku powered up to 18% and countered the strike with his own, and both of them were shot in opposite directions and landed painfully on the ground. Around them, the crowd was cheering loudly at seeing such an amazing fight. Izuku and Rumi then raced towards each other and blocked each other with powerful high kicks. Rumi quickly overpowered him and quickly jumped up in the air and did a spinning backward kick. Izuku brought his arm up and blocked as he was sent flying. He quickly kicked the air, which stopped him midair before he kicked his other leg to correct himself before using Black Whip again as a slingshot. Blitzing forward, he landed a painful kick on her side, then released a massive smoke cloud to block her view. Rumi looked around trying to find him, but then her ear twitched and she quickly dropped to the ground, dodging a flying kick, but she twisted her body fast enough and landed her own strike on him. Izuku flew back and slid across the ground and looked up at her with his glowing green eyes and her bright red eyes that stared straight back. They both silently said the same thing. This next attack will finish this fight. Rumi crouched down and she flexed the muscles in her legs as much as she could to push off the ground as fast as possible. For Izuku, his danger sense was going haywire and warning him that this attack is incredibly dangerous. Because of that, he cranked the power up to 20% in hopes he was gauging her strength correctly, or this will be extremely painful. Both of them stared at each other, waiting for the other to flinch, and Rumi's ear twitched. Boom! A massive explosion went off, and it sounded like the air itself cracked from the sheer level or power and force that was just released in a single moment. Not only that, but now both of them are standing where the other just stood. Izuku's shirt had a massive missing chunk out of it, and a large purple bruise on his chest and stomach from her kick. Rumi wasn't much better, as a large tear was on her stomach, and a large bruise was forming quickly. Both of them continued to stand, before Rumi's body gave first, and she fell on the ground unconscious, with Izuku quickly following after, given the sheer blunt force trauma. I can't believe it. They both knocked each other out, but Izuku Aizawa stayed awake just a little longer. Because of that, he is our winner. Good job, kid. Hope you work under me, and I'll fix a couple holes you got, said Hawks as he turned and walked away, heading back home and to prepare in case Izuku does come. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Dragon and Bunny Guardian. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to NezutheRatGod for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Wattpad for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zen and Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.